from senior year in high school and says, I really am into this guy or that guy, and they really are into it, the parents often will listen to the kid and go that way. So I think they could be, to answer your question, it could be a political movement heading into November. But it's a long way to go. Whether they can maintain this intensity, I don't know. Now, on March 24th, which is 4 weeks from the day after tomorrow, Saturday the 24th, they're calling for a million-kid march in Washington, D.C. about this thing.
Oh, boy.
That's sort of like the women's demonstrations a year ago in Washington and elsewhere. If the kids show up, if it's a big deal, then I think this thing could morph into a political factor, just like the Me Too movement has morphed in 5 months into a political factor.
Yeah, and that's the thing that gets me, because I'm wondering now if the NRA becomes persona non grata. Are they radioactive? This student who was pushing this issue of accepting campaign contributions from the NRA, I don't know if that becomes a lightning rod for political campaigns because of the NRA stance. I don't hear the NRA trying to defend any of this stuff here that's happened. I mean, it's a terrible tragedy. But you're right. I mean, it comes back to they need to do something. Something.
They need to do something, and I think that they want to do something, they being the Republican Party. After all, we're running the House and Senate and the White House, and I think Trump, who's very politically, very smart, very wise to things, he knows he's got to come up with something, but he also does not want to anger the NRA or his base. He never likes to run across or run afoul of them. So whatever he'll do, it will pretty much be in agreement with the NRA. They might fight him a little bit, but he's not going to go against them in a big way, I don't think.
I mean, boy, it dominated everything. Is there any other country, to your knowledge, that handles the issue of guns anywhere like us? I mean, England, they always brag about the fact they don't have guns, and look at us. But how do countries like Japan handle it, or Australia? Have you ever heard anything about that? Is it just that our media is so active?
Well, I really don't know. I mean, all I've heard is the only other country in the world that has as many guns per capita as we do is Yemen, which is in a perpetual state of civil war, and everybody's walking around with a machine gun. We haven't quite gotten to that yet.
We're talking with John LeBoutier. We're going to open the phone lines up at 239-0033, toll-free 1-800-927-0033 if you want to get comments in. Is this also going to take the president's eye off the ball in terms of where we go now with the rest of the issues relating to the economy? I know there's been some concerns that we may end up having increased inflation. The market was kind of crazy over the last couple of weeks. Does this issue, is it a few weeks, or is it going to dominate the news cycle, you think, for a while?
Well, until something else comes along, this will be the big story, and the media loves this story because they've got a million people to interview every night, victims, families, other kids, all this and that. I think the story stays hot for a while. I don't think it'll distract the president. If you're going to be president, you got to be able to do more than one thing at a time. He's passed the tax cut thing. There isn't much right now for the president to do on the economy. And we're getting into this election year anyway, where not much gets passed by Congress anyway, Mark. So he can focus on this gun thing. He can do it. He can decide what he wants to do, which he should come up with a plan in the next few days or a week, or maybe he already had the plan. Maybe that's the thing I read his tweet about. Raise the age, get rid of bump stocks, and expand the background check. So if that's what he's going to do. They'll get a bill pulled together in the House or Senate and start working on that. See if they can get somewhere with it. And that's what he should do, and I think he will do it.
Let me move to the issue of Bob Corker. We learned about this late in the afternoon. We're hearing now that Corker is rethinking. Maybe he should run for re-election and not retire. And we knew that Marsha Blackburn was already committed to running for that Senate seat. And Phil Bredesen, the former governor for the Democrats, he's going to get involved. If Corker decides to make another run, where does the president go? Corker's hardly been a friend of the president. What happens if Corker decides to run again? Your thoughts?
Yeah, Corker's really screwed this thing up because he announced he wasn't going to run last fall, whereupon Marsha Blackburn said, I'm going to run. She is running. So she's giving up her House seat to run for the Senate. Trump called her again last week to tell her that he's supporting her. He hasn't announced that publicly, but she's in the race, and she's not getting out. So if Corker wants to get back in, we've got the issue of does Corker run a primary against Marsha Blackburn, which is insane that this came about. And the other part of the rumor you're hearing, that I'm hearing, is that Corker has sort of been told, don't run unless Trump endorses you, which he would have done last fall. He wanted to, but Corker said, I don't want to run again. So it puts Trump in a tough spot because he's privately assured Marsha Blackburn that he's with her.
Yeah.
If he reverses and supports Corker, that's pretty disloyal. I think that Corker screwed it up. He ought to stick with his decision not to run again.
Yeah, I don't know why, and it's not like he's been a friend to the president. And I agree. If he leaves Blackburn and goes to, because I don't know if the smart money is on Corker or it's on is well entrenched from her years in Congress. I think she's been in Congress for 20 years. We know Marsha Blackburn. I actually know her better than I know Corker from the years that we were on the air up there. But Phil Bredesen, the governor, John, he's not a typical Democratic governor. He's actually very conservative and very well liked. I don't write that guy off for a minute. And in this ever-changing climate where we've already had, I think, 2 congressional seats in the last week go Democrat, and they were in Trump territory. One of them was here in Florida. I think Tennessee could end up with a Democrat. It's possible they'll have a Democrat in that Senate seat.
Well, first of all, the 2 seats in the last couple of weeks are state legislative seats, not congressional seats. That was a state Senate seat over near Tampa that went.
That was Vern Buchanan's son. Yes. That's
right. They're not U.S. Congress, but it's a precursor of what people fear is coming in Congress. And listen, I agree with you. Phil Bredesen was a very competent Democratic governor of a state that has become a Republican state, Tennessee. But this year, with this stuff that's going on, if Corker and Blackburn chop each other up, Governor Bredesen could win that Senate seat. He could possibly win it. He's no left-wing idiot out of touch with Tennessee.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I was just surprised that, Corker was talking about running again after it sounded like he had gotten fed up and he was leaving. And so you got Rand Paul. I don't even know if Rand Paul's going to run again. Are you hearing anything about him?
He just got reelected last year.
But this is it for him. I think that when it's like, who's the congressman from South Carolina that's out now that he's not going to run again?
That's Trey Gowdy.
Trey Gowdy. That kind of surprised me, but I also think he's a very honorable guy, and I think his reasons were just. He just got fed up. I think he wants to go practice law, but I also believe from the people I've talked with, this isn't the end of the road for Trey Gowdy. I think he'll end up being the governor of that state one day.
I don't think so. I think he wants to be a federal judge.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's an opening on a bench, and I think he's going to go for that. I think he wants Trump to appoint him. It's what I'm reading. But anyway, he's very honorable. I agree with you. And a lot of guys are retiring this year. But this Senate seat thing was unnecessary for Corker to change his mind. As I understood, he's going to announce what he's going to do tomorrow.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll know. By the next time you and I talk, we'll know what's happening with him. He's really screwed this thing up,
Yeah, it came from out of nowhere, and that would be expensive. And the worry I would have, if you're a strict Republican strategist, that it would be a very expensive primary between Blackburn and Corker. I don't see Blackburn backing out, just simply because Corker had changed his mind. They would spend so much money, it would be a weakened victor coming out of the gate to take on Bredesen.
Hella, that's exactly what will happen, and that's why it's a stupid damn move by Corker, and it allows the Democrats to maybe win that seat.
Unbelievable. Okay,
yeah.
Romney.
And we have your Senate seat in Florida, Bill Nelson.
Yep.
We still don't know if Governor Scott's going to run against him.
Boy, I'll tell you something. If he doesn't announce when the legislative session ends March 9th, if he doesn't announce and just decides, well, I'm going to sail into the sunset, because I'm hearing there's pressure from the family for him not to do this because he spent so much money being governor. I mean, he didn't take a salary, and he spent like $160 million of his own money to run twice. I expect he is going to announce, but if he doesn't, no one's been warming up in the bullpen. It's like a baseball game. Nobody, because everybody just assumed he was going to do it. And if they don't, there's going to be a scramble to the top, which they'll come up with somebody, but it'll be a weakened Republican. And Nelson, who's been steadfastly out there raising money for years, he might just win the thing again.
Yeah.
Crazy.
No, it's another crucial seat. I think that Scott's going to end up running myself. It just seems that way to me. And then I don't know. I bet it's a very close race the whole way. Nelson's fairly popular. Governor Scott's been a good governor. I'm not. I don't know how many governors, when they go for the Senate, make it. They don't all make it right away. Sometimes it's a harder transition electorally than people realize.
That is right.
They might be a little sick of him as governor, and they don't want him anymore or whatever. And it's an off year, and something even as small as the people who've moved into Florida from Puerto Rico.
Yes.
That could tip the balance in the election in November.
Very true. Hey, I'm watching the clock, and I got to get a baseball question in here. Chuck Bennett and I talked about this, and we're curious because you are all things baseball to us. Major League Baseball is looking for ways to speed up the game, and they're looking at some things like trips to the mound. And I said to Chuck, one of the things you can't control is throws to first. Some people do it a lot. Some people don't do it at all. Some people can't do it. Do you think, John, that the fans have just grown weary of the length of the game? How critical is it to the success and future of the game of baseball to speed it up?
Well, based on the attendance figures every year, it's not a problem because people may say the games are too long, but they're still buying tickets and going to the games. And I believe the TV ratings continue to be good every year. So that they do. The games are getting longer. Just 10 years ago, it was 2 hours and 45 minutes for an average game. Now it's 3 hours and 14 minutes. It's almost half an hour longer. So they have announced this week that they are limiting to the number of 6 visits to the mound during a 9-inning game by anybody. Catcher, first baseman, shortstop, pitching coach, 6 per game. So that takes away a little bit of time. To me, as a baseball player and as a fan, the single biggest thing that's added time onto these games is they do not enforce a rule that I believe is still a rule, which is with no one on base, when the batter steps in the batter's box to begin his at-bat, he is not ever to step out again of the batter's box with both feet unless he's got permission from the umpire. So if you look at an old game on ESPN Classics, the guy steps in there and the pitcher throws a pitch and the catcher throws it back to the pitcher. And the whole time of that at-bat, that batter stays in the batter's box. Nowadays, you watch a game, the guy steps out, adjusts each batting glove for like 10, 15 seconds each, looks around, scratches himself, spits a couple times, holds his hand up to the ump, let me dig in again, and we go through this on every pitch of every at-bat.
Yeah.
And it's a violation of an already existing rule, which is get in the batter's box. Once you're in, you stay in. Without permission, you can't get out until the at-bat is over. And then the pitcher is supposed to get the ball back from the catcher, get the sign, and throw another pitch. All this walking around, rubbing up the ball, it's a bunch of garbage. They got to speed through that stuff. Get rid of all that, and suddenly the game will be back to being 2 hours and 25 minutes. It'll go fast.
Yeah. Well, football has their own problem with attendance, despite the success of the Super Bowl and all of that. And I think that the knee and the national anthem and all that hurt them. The comparison we were doing, we were looking at the NHL, which has now changed their All-Star game. The NBA has changed their All-Star game. I don't know if that's because they're trying to reinvent parts they can reinvent. But when you have, in the case of the National Hockey League, I think it's something like 30 teams, and 21 make the playoffs. I mean, come on, you know what I mean? The season goes until June now. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's insane. Guy used to say the whole 82 regular season is to eliminate Winnipeg from the playoffs. I mean, they play 82 games just to get rid of one team. Then we start all over again in the playoffs. It's insane. It's insane. It cheapens the value of a regular season game if everybody makes the playoffs anyway. Well, what difference does it really make,
True.
So there's a lot of problems in these sports. All the problems are all related to one thing, money. Everybody's trying to make more money off of you and me and all the other fans. Either get us to watch a longer game, to watch more advertising so they can get more money. Don't forget, if the game's 3.5 hours instead of 2.5, that's an hour more in which they can throw 30 commercials in. Everything. And the longer you're at the ballpark, the more beer, the more hot dogs, the more money you spend. I tell you, go to these modern ballparks, and they've got setups there now where you see people. They are moving all 9 innings, going to this place to get this to eat, this place to get that, this club to go in. That's why half the seats are empty. It's not that the people aren't there. They're doing something else during the game, eating,
exactly,
playing a game, doing the internet. I mean, it's amazing.
We have about a minute. What's on the next installment of Revolution _ the podcast?
Well, we're recording it in 1 hour at 5 o'clock, and I heard what you said. I don't know that we're going to do much on this gun thing. We might. I have to talk to Arlene and decide what we do. We end up doing more Trump and politics and what's going on. I mean, we'll do some guns, I guess, but and I'm always trying to look ahead to where we're headed politically.
I'm going to be listening because we want to know what's the deal with Kushner. How come he hasn't gotten White House clearance after more than a year? What's going on?
Well, of course, we won't know why not. They don't tell us that, although it's speculated that one of the reasons he's not getting clearance is that Robert Mueller is investigating him. Okay. He's in this Trump-Russia investigation, of course, and the FBI would be wary of clearing someone who is currently under investigation.
Well, we'll be listening. Revolution _ the podcast. John and Arlene, you'll be able to get it online, of course. And thank you so much for being with us, and thanks for moving the time. We'll be talking with you next week at our usual time, John.
All right. Can't wait, Mark. Thanks.
More of Mark Bernier Replay today. Highlights from today's show that you may have missed. Coming up on WNDB.
When you are injured or intentionally attacked at a place of business, there are things you should know and things you should do. I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. First, know that you will have the burden to prove that the place of business knew or should have known of the dangerous condition. Make sure someone goes back and immediately takes pictures. Keep any and all receipts to prove you were there. Get witnesses if you can. and keep your shoes and clothing that you were wearing at the time of the injury. When you're the victim of a crime, that very business or public facility may not have provided proper lighting or security. They also may have negligently hired the person responsible for your injury. Once you hire us, we begin the process of obtaining evidence, taking witness statements, and investigating your claim. Time is of the essence. Don't wait. Call us on your cell phone at Pound Law. That's pound 529, or visit forthepeople.com. Morgan & Morgan, for the people. Offices, Daytona Beach.
Have you seen those bright work shirts that P&S Paving wears? Or what about those sleek black embroidered polos at Stonewood Grill? Did you see those durable work shirts the Giles Electric team wears? Do you know what they all have in common? They went to Mid-Florida Sportswear for all their business apparel. Why? Because Mid-Florida Sportswear is Daytona Beach's local printer for over 40 years that's been serving businesses like yours with work t-shirts, embroidered polos, hats, and more. From the front of the house in a restaurant to the back of the warehouse, Mid-Florida Sportswear can outfit your whole company. Businesses, government agencies, and more like Cunningham Oil and the Daytona Beach Fire Department rely on Mid-Florida Sportswear. For a great deal on t-shirts, polos, hats, safety vests, and more, call Mid-Florida Sportswear today at 386-258-5632 or stop by the big teal building behind the airport on Bellevue. After hours, visit mfswear.com and send your quote in. That's mfswear.com. Mid-Florida Sportswear in the big teal building behind the airport.
Now, more of Mark Bernier Replay Today. Highlights of today's show recorded earlier on FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB.
As the Russian presidential elections approach and the debate on the Russian meddling in the U.S. elections continues, Stetson's program in Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian Studies, affectionately referred to as SPREES, is hosting David Filippov, who is the recently returned Washington Post Moscow bureau chief, for his perspective and insight. This is going to take place this afternoon. Starts at 5:30, just down the road from us, in the DuPont Ball Library Room. That's 225L. It's on the Stetson campus in DeLand, right off of Williamson Boulevard. When you come down, you just go right to the main campus. There'll be signage that points you to this. He was the Moscow bureau chief, and David covered the aftermath of the election of President Trump in Russia and the continued descent of the U.S.-Russian relations to something that resembles a new Cold War. To talk about it in a preview, and we hope that you'll join them at Stetson off Wilson Boulevard. David Filippov joins us live today on WNDB. David, thanks for squeezing us in. I know they get you on a treadmill this afternoon.
Oh, no, it's great. Thank you for having me.
Okay. I think everybody wants to know, first off, and you're going to be talking about it later this afternoon, how important is or was this election to the Russian government? How closely did they watch it, and did they watch it more closely than other elections?
The U.S. presidential election in 2016?
Yes.
Yeah, they were obsessed with it. Obviously, it had huge implications for U.S.-Russian policy, especially as it became clear that the choice was going to be somebody who came from the way the Russian look at it, the Clinton-Obama, Clinton sort of ongoing, the way they see it, sort of the block of Democratic leadership that has been in power since 1992. Either that or somebody new, the way they see it, somebody who would challenge the American establishment, not only from the point of view of the Republican Party, because they see Donald Trump as more than that. They believe that the American Democratic and Republican parties are one big establishment, and that establishment is fundamentally anti-Russian. So the idea that somebody who's an outsider could come and challenge that was obviously something that was being watched very closely in Moscow, not only from entities that were seeking to influence that election. Just everybody was fascinated by the idea. The last years of the Obama presidency for people in Russia, again, both in government and opponents of the government, were considered the most disastrous from the point of view of Russia for U.S.-Russian relationships. The way they see it, President Obama just decided Russia didn't matter and gave up and actually became extremely aggressive and anti-Russian in his behavior. That's the way they see it over there.
David, did you get any kind of sense that the Russians were afraid of Trump or not?
All right, so and I get this question a lot from the point of view of, do I think that Putin wanted Trump to win? It's kind of a cousin question to what you asked me, right? Again, Russians I've spoken to thought that the end of the Obama era was the worst that could possibly happen, and you saw Russians, relatively unhinged Russians, but you saw Russians predicting that a Clinton presidency would undoubtedly lead us to something like war, like the Third World War. Russian politicians were all out there saying, not everybody, but hardliners, radicals, kind of hellraisers were out there saying, if Clinton's president, we're going to have World War III. And, this idea that things could only get worse with more of the same of this democratic establishment. Trump, on the other hand, for smart Russians who study things, what he represented was a complete break with that, but not clear what he meant. Now, because he was making so many positive statements about the relationship with Russia and let's have a better relationship, and why should we have a bad relationship with Putin, all that sounded really good. But when you got the people who study the United States closely, who understand that a classic American politician like Hillary Clinton would have been, it's predictable, it's understandable what the United States is going to want, it's understandable where the United States sees its interests, whereas with Donald Trump, it was unclear what he's going to want. And there's an argument to be made that it was easier for Putin to continue to disrupting as, the master of the unexpected and continue to kind of like harass Europe and the United States with Clinton as president, especially a Hillary Clinton dogged by the whole thing was rigged, which would have been a defeated Trump's mantra. It was much easier for them to have that than to have an unpredictable like Donald Trump in power.
Were they worried about Hillary at all?
Yeah, they were worried. I mean, Putin has a personal animus towards Hillary Clinton because when she was Secretary of State and Russia had huge street protests in Moscow, Clinton blamed her. The protests in Moscow where tens of thousands of people would come out to protest what they just figured were unfair elections in Russia. Putin blamed Hillary Clinton for making that happen. He believes, and he was saying all the time, and therefore state television repeated, that the Americans were interfering in Russia's affairs back in 2012, and this is, essentially getting back at us for that. The idea is we shouldn't let America do all the interfering. We can do some of our own. That's like one of the kind of theories that's out there. So anyway, for him, Hillary Clinton was not somebody that he looked forward to having as American president, but at the same time, a wounded, discredited Hillary Clinton whose legitimacy was being questioned by the person who lost the election would have been a very convenient American president from Putin's point of view.
We're talking with David Filipoff, recently returned Washington Post Moscow bureau chief. We take it for granted in a free and open society that we have a free press, even though Washington will often stonewall the press and not give them what they're asking, and they have to dig, and they'll obfuscate and put off. How do you do it when you're in Russia, in which you don't have a free press at all? William Taubman, David, told us when he was here in January that Putin basically tolerates a few press links, but basically they control everything. How does the Washington Post go about gathering its news in a country that's not exactly open?
Right. Well, actually, and speaking of President Obama, he never gave the Post an interview. I mean, a lot of journalists complained that the Obama presidency was one of the most difficult for White House reporters. I wasn't there, so I don't know, but just as an aside. First of all, the Russian press is not free in the sense that it is in the United States. It's not a free country in the sense it is. But Russian reporters do independent investigations, and there are outlets that behave like free media. And a lot of the things, and I'm going to be talking about this in my talk later on at Stetson tonight, a lot of the stuff that's in Mueller's indictment of the Russian troll factory was reported in the Russian media, whether Putin wanted it there or not. But it is very difficult to work, and it is heavily controlled for Russian reporters. It's not difficult for an American reporter to live, work, travel around. I mean, once you have an official accreditation, nobody bothers you, and you can come and go into Parliament. You can go to all the foreign ministry briefings. The problem is that people don't want to talk to you because they don't expect anything good to come from having their name in the Washington Post. So it's very hard to get people on the street. It's very hard to get people in provinces to want to agree to your story. And a lot of official people will only give you an interview if you show them the questions in advance and if you show them the answers after the interview. That's difficult because, again, they don't believe they're going to get a fair shake.
Does the government
or the
ever...
story's going to make them look bad.
Okay. Does the government ever interfere with the delivery of your news to the main bureau? In other words, cut down the internet, attempt to stop the story from going out? Did you ever run into those types of things?
You know, they went out of their way to make it clear to us that they weren't doing that. Like, people have asked me, were you listened to? Were they following you? And the thing is, I lived in Russia. I lived in the Soviet Union. I assumed that was happening, but there was never any evidence that I saw, and there was definitely nobody letting me know that was happening. If the lights went out, it went out for an honest reason. And furthermore, when one of our stories in an offhand way referred to somebody being hassled, I got called in. They wanted me to explain where it came from, and they wanted to assure me that would never happen. And if anyone gave us a hard time, tell us who that is, because they just didn't want me to be able to say that they're doing that. They're very concerned about the reputation they have for interfering with media. And so as far as I was concerned, and I'm not trying to, cover up, or I'm not trying to give them, a good sell. As far as I was concerned, they went out of their way to go the other direction, to not get in my way. Now, this is not the practice. This is not the experience for diplomats from the United States. People who aren't accredited or freelancers have their own problems, but they did not want me to be able to say I'm being harassed, and so they went out of their way not to let it happen.
Does the Russian media engage in its own form of fake news?
Well, there's plenty of Russian media outlets that are state-run that generate or reflect fake news, or do the thing that is most, let's say, pernicious. They take things that are true and slant them to make them fake. That happens all the time. It's not all of them, and they don't all do it all the time. But, again, the idea is to give the people the illusion that you're showing real news and having it actually be slanted to make the point that they want to make. There's a lot of that about Ukraine. Most of the state-run coverage of Ukraine focuses on fascists that want to, push out or repress Russians in Ukraine, are running the country, and we're backing them because they're fighting Russians, and the U.S. wants Russia to be on its knees. So that narrative gets repeated over and over and over again, and any evidence to the contrary never makes it onto the big state television. Or, 25,000 people will go out and demonstrate against corruption in the government, and the state TV programs won't show it.
I know this is not part of your talk tonight, but one of the things I knew about you was that you were part of the Boston Globe newsroom that got the Pulitzer in 2014 for the breaking story of the Boston Marathon bombing. Where were you when that happened?
All right, so famously, that's Patriots Day, which is also the first school vacation. I and my son were on a plane on our way to go visit a friend for school vacation. The reason that the marathon's held that day is because it's a day off. Basically, Boston's biggest day, because the Red Sox play in the morning, there's the marathon, it's a day off, it's the beginning of school vacation. So I was on a plane. We landed, turned around, went back so that I could take part in the story. My role comes in when it turns out that the suspect, now the convicted bombers were from southern Russia, half Chechen, half Avar, children of emigres. And then it became sort of much more a story that I was involved in since I had covered the war in Chechnya and knew the area and everything like that. So starting Thursday, the bombing was Monday, Patriots Day, and starting Thursday, I was a big part of that effort, and then spent the rest of the year trying to figure out what these guys were up to and where they came from.
David, to come back to Russia on Putin, from your experience and standpoint, how much longer is this guy going to run the show over there?
Well, he's, what is he, 60, is he 64 now, 66? I can't remember. I should know that off the top of my head, right? He's going to win in March 18th, not even barring a miracle. He has to win that election. It's going to happen. It's just a question of what's the turnout and what's his number. And that means 6 more years. According to Russia's constitution, which he's so far obeyed, he's allowed 2 6-year terms in a row. He could take a break and come back again, but they'd have to change the constitution for him to run again in 2024. And there's a question of, how long is he going to live? Will he want to be president? But for the next 6 years, he's going to be president. And that means for the next 6 years, Russia's not going to withdraw from Crimea or return Crimea, which they annexed. Therefore, the sanctions therefore, the relationship that we now have is probably going to pretty much be, frozen unless something changes in this country.
Did you get a sense for how the Russians felt when President Trump announced that he was going to move the capital of Israel?
It wasn't a huge visceral issue for ordinary people, but it was something that, by that time, the new car smell of the Trump presidency had worn off. People had hoped that President Trump would need better relations, had plenty of time to become disappointed. And now what analysts in Moscow were focusing on was missteps of the Trump presidency and things that Trump would do that would show America's declining influence. And to the extent that there was a lot of commentary about that anyway, because Russia was worried about its own Middle Eastern issues, it was about the, relatively clumsy and, poorly thought out way from the Russian point of view. And I guess a lot of people around the United States also shared this, that he did that, just basically, unilaterally declaring it and, therefore changing an equation that had been in place for so long. But that was only certain highbrow kind of foreign policy elite type of analysts. The ordinary person probably didn't care that much.
How do the Russians view ISIS? Do they feel like, we've got to keep our hands in this Middle East thing because we don't want them coming over here? How do they look at ISIS?
Okay, so a lot of terror attacks have been blamed on the Islamic State, and the Islamic State has recruited Chechens, people from Dagestan, people from the former Soviet republics, Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan. Basically, there's a large Muslim population, a lot of impoverished Muslims. And so Russia knows that Islamic State is a serious problem. Islamic State is banned in Russia as a terrorist organization. In fact, if we were in Russia, I can't mention the Islamic State without saying that the Islamic State is a terrorist organization banned in Russia. So if you write it in your story, you have to say the Islamic State and then parentheses, a terrorist organization banned in Russia. Or if we were doing a radio interview, I'd have to say Islamic State, a terrorist organization banned in Russia. So it's a big thing. In Syria, the Russian intervention there to support Bashar al-Assad, the president, is portrayed as Russia fighting the Islamic State. The United States is also fighting the Islamic State, and to the extent that the United States is also, Russia is also targeting, the two sides argue about who's actually fighting ISIS. The Russians, by the way, make the argument that the United States' presence in Syria is actually to support ISIS so that it can fight Assad. Syria is a mess. It's very complicated. It changes all the time. And it's another place where, the U.S.-Russian disagreement comes out, because on paper we've both been attacked by horrible terrorist attacks, and we both blame ISIS. But the two sides don't agree about who's killing the right people in Syria, although both claim to be killing ISIS.
I grew up in Rhode Island. I worked for the Providence Journal Bulletin a million years ago. You went to Brown University. I didn't know that until today.
I did, and I read the Projo constantly and thoroughly.
And I'm curious, because I know our listeners want to get your take on this. Those 13 indictments against these Russian agents, these people who the Mueller investigation has singled out, did you see that coming?
You could see it coming because the Russian media had done a thorough X-ray of those troll factories, starting in 2013 when the trolls started by trolling Russian sites. They didn't just jump in and start, trolling the U.S. You'd go on Russian discussion boards in 2013, 2014. In 2014, it was all about Ukraine. But essentially, this agency started working then, and Russian media started writing about it then. But the actual work of the agency, the way it appears in Mueller's indictment, at least as far as the operations in Russia are concerned, not the operations of these individuals who came, and dealt in the United States, that's described in detail in October, in August in the Russian media. So you could see that this was coming because they could have drawn their outline up about what was already reported in the Russian press. Again, we have this idea over here that the Russian press is completely servile and subservient to the Putin, regime, and that isn't exactly true. So anyway, you knew that there was something, and you knew that Mueller was going to get to it. The part that was interesting and new is the length to which these Russians went to try to pose as Americans, how they tried to steal identities, how they tried to co-opt Americans unwittingly into doing their campaigns. We also knew, thanks to the Russian media, about the involvement of the man known as Putin's chef, Yevgeny Prigozhin, who in the indictment is the financier of some of the companies that are also mentioned that financed this operation. He's famous because he's made restaurants in St. Petersburg, which is Putin's hometown, where Putin liked to go. And, for example, when President George W. Bush visited Putin in 2002, they both dined at one of this guy's restaurants. So there's a connection to Putin that is, through acquaintance and through maybe patronage. So although Mueller's indictment doesn't actually mention Putin or the Russian government, we see this connection. And so we expected a lot of it, some of the juicy details, and I do recommend everybody read that thing. It's on the Department of Justice website. There's a lot of kind of colorful details about what these individuals did or allegedly did, because it's just an indictment. It's not a conviction in the United States.
Finally, two leaders I wanted to get your take on. You wrote about Boris Yeltsin. I don't know much about him outside of what I kind of learned from Tubman when he was here, but you wrote about Yeltsin's Kremlin. What was he like as a leader, and how is he going to be remembered?
Well, those are good questions, because in Russia, of course, there isn't a long tradition of good memories of the last leader, right? I mean, one of the things about Russia is that peaceful transitions of power, that's where we and them diverge, right? We've had a tradition of that since Washington, and that's really the painful thing about election meddling, is that somebody interfering with that treasure of American democracy, especially a country that has never had those. Yeltsin became the first popular Democratic politician back in the Soviet Union when he voluntarily left.
It's going to look forward to your comments. Be at 5:30 this afternoon. That's right, in the DuPont Ball Library, room 25L on the campus of Stetson in DeLand off Woodland Boulevard. David Filipoff, our guest today on WNDB. Congratulations on some great work and your Pulitzer, and for all the things you do, and thanks for being with us today on WNDB.
Thanks for having me.
FM 93.5, AM 1150, WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned, a Southern Stone station.
He went waited for backup. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. New details about the actions of the school resource officer on duty at a Florida high school where 17 people were killed last week. Fox's Steve Rappaport has this live.
Lisa, Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel says it was the resource officer's inaction that raises serious concerns.
It doesn't matter who went in first. It doesn't matter in what order you went in. What matters is that when we in law enforcement arrive at an active shooter, we go in and address the target. And that's what should have been done.
Officer Scott Peterson didn't go in and chose to resign after he was suspended without pay and placed under investigation. Peterson took up a position by the western entrance of the building that was under attack for 4 minutes. Sheriff Israel saying Peterson's conduct made him sick to his stomach. Lisa?
Steve, in the wake of the shooting, the White House saying President Trump is open to discussions on gun control.
The president is proposing ideas. He's listening right now. He's been talking about a series of ideas. He's talked about strengthening background checks, right, with an emphasis on mental health. He's also talked about raising the age for some gun sales. He's talked about ending bump stocks, the sale of bump stocks.
Deputy Press Secretary Raj Shah. New charges brought against former Trump campaign associates.
Special counsel Robert Mueller filed a new 32-count indictment charging former campaign chairman Paul Manafort and his deputy Rick Gates with multiple counts of tax and bank fraud. The new charges returned by a federal grand jury in Alexandria, Virginia, come after Mueller separately charged the two men in Washington last year with money laundering and failing to register as foreign agents for their work related to Ukraine. The charges against Manafort and Gates don't relate to any allegations of misconduct related to President Trump's presidential campaign.
Fox's John Decker at the White House. Fox News, fair and balanced.
The clock is ticking. Every day you put off buying life insurance can cost you big time. The older you get, the more you'll have to pay. And a sudden accident or unexpected illness could cause your rates to skyrocket or even make you uninsurable. Beat the clock. Call Select Quote now. No hassle, no obligation. In minutes, you'll have a choice of your best rates from up to 10 highly rated life insurance companies. Richard, 40 years old, takes meds to control his cholesterol. Still, Select Quote got him a 10-year, $500,000 policy for under $25 a month. Under $1 a day. Don't risk your family security another minute. Get your free quote now. Just call 800-280-8787. That's 800-280-8787. 800-280-8787 or go to selectquote.com. Since 1985, we shop, you save.
Get full details on the example policy at selectquote.com/commercials. Or price could vary depending on your health, issuing company, and other factors. Not available in all states.
The opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants, the hosts, the guests, and the callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions and views of Southern Stone Communications, WNDB Radio, its employees, and friends. Comments regarding WNDB's programming can be addressed to D. Lang at DaytonaRadio.com.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class, speaking the truth about the D.C. swamp dwellers and the deep state, making America great again in the face of fierce resistance. This is Trump Talk Live, where we the people have the right voice. Presented by the Republican Party of Volusia County. Here are your Trump-Publican hosts for the final 2-hour episode, Vic Baker and Joe Fieldus.
Greetings, fellow American patriot Trumppublicans, and welcome to the 2-hour final episode of Trump Talk Live, which for the past year has been the home of fearless truth-telling about our bold, visionary, transformational 45th President, Donald J. Trump, and his unparalleled vision and mission to restore American greatness, empower the people as sovereign rulers of their own destiny, and roll back the deep state which threatens the very core foundation of our republic. We have been diligent defenders of Donald Trump's America First agenda. We have been explaining to you that this president is unlike any other that came before. We know that we, the people, are the last best hope in preserving the dream of an America where every individual is a ruler of his or her own destiny. where self-sufficiency and personal initiative opens up a floodgate of opportunity. Donald Trump has heard the pleas of the forgotten Americans, the deplorables who pay the tab for this country day after day and year after year. We are not perfect, but we strive to form a more perfect union. Sadly, some in America are more interested in scoring cheap points than achieving a better life for all Americans, rich, poor, and in between. We've just witnessed another American nightmare. This time the school massacre happened here in Florida. There is a natural human urge to react in anger when bad things happen to good people. We want to find someone to blame. We want our leaders to find an immediate cure to this evil scourge of wanton human carnage. Over time, our outrage and our heartbreak will heal enough to allow us to pursue common sense, rational solutions to this epidemic of bloodshed in America's heartland. It's understandable that many among us point to the guns, but the answer to this cry of the heart is not answered so simply. We already guard our airports, our banks, our celebrities, our political leaders, our courts, our public facilities with guns. Sadly, it's time we confront the obvious. We don't adequately guard our most precious resource, our children, from heartless killers who seek to inflict mayhem on in our midst, and to destroy our lives. Our president is listening. He's made this his priority. In this 2-hour finale of Trump Talk Live, you'll hear how our commander-in-chief is hearing cries of the heart and seeking rational ways to answer with solutions that actually work. Those solutions include better screening of gun owners for mental health issues, better follow-up with people who are at risk of committing violence, and better protection of the facilities that house our children every school day. The past week has also seen indictments of 13 Russians by Special Counsel Mueller, an indictment that says Russians did meddle in our electoral process but failed to change the outcome of the election. Yes, there was Russian mischief, but no American was a witting participant. Where's your Russian collusion now, full of shift? Is it possible that after a year of holding America in suspense, the Mueller investigation will end with a whimper? There is some real skullduggery to uncover involving J. Edgar Comey, the Clinton cover-up, Uranium One, the dirty dossier, and corrupt players at the CIA, FBI, State Department, and DOJ. You might actually uncover some real Russian collusion if you don't give a pass to Comey, Lynch, the Clintons, Obama, and a cast of scoundrels still lurking in the shadows with cover from their Democrat cohorts deeply embedded in the deep state. More than 4 decades ago, it took more than 2 years for a 2-bit burglary at the Watergate to finally trigger the downfall of Richard Nixon. Some of the crimes against Trump may take a while to expose, but this is not over yet. Sorry, I won't be at this microphone to share it with you, but we'll be in touch, have no fear. Trump Talk Live has come to you live each Thursday from the Daytona Beach studios of WNDB 93.5 FM, 1150 AM, with the voices of Trump World coming to you under the masterful touch of our technical producer, Phil Kincaid. We stream live video of our broadcast in the Volusia County Facebook page, which happens to be working tonight, and on the Vic Baker page at YouTube, where you can search Trump Talk Live to find us. Our deep gratitude goes to Volusia Teenage Republicans, Ian Escalante, Malcolm Swaggerty, and Duncan DeMarche, our faithful behind-the-scenes crew. Malcolm Swaggerty, I'll give him time to catch up, is manning the graphic controls for the first time for our web stream tonight. Malcolm recently registered to vote and is now a member of the Volusia County Republican Executive Committee along with Duncan DeMarche. Congratulations on your upcoming college career, Malcolm. And he is a solid Trumpublican. I'm your fearless Trumpublican truth-telling host, Vic Baker, bringing the final Trump Talk Live 2-hour episode tonight alongside my co-host, pinch hitting for the ailing Joe Fieldis, the outstanding teenage Republican of Florida, Volusia TAR's chairman, Duncan DeMarche. Duncan is a high school senior, and we believe he can offer you a unique perspective on the tragic school murders in Parkland and what we should do to make sure our kids are safe. Duncan, welcome to the microphone.
Thank you, sir, for that kind introduction. For those of you who don't know, like Mr. Baker said, my name is Duncan DeMarche, the chairman of the Volusia County Teenage Republicans, which we believe to be the largest teenage Republican chapter in the United States of America. Our group of 100-plus high school students has one simple goal: promote liberty at all costs. That is why almost a year ago we signed on to help work behind the scenes on the Trump Talk Live radio show. Over the past year, your Trump Talk Live hosts, Vic Baker, Joe Fieldis, and Mr. Tony Ledbetter, have worked to circumvent the mainstream media and tell you the truth about President Trump's mission to make America great again. And in that regard, I believe our Trump Talk Live team has been incredibly successful. But the fight is not yet over. President Trump is being attacked on all fronts by many different enemies. The news media has effectively become the militant arm of the progressive left. Their fake news rhetoric is intended for the sole purpose of indoctrinating the masses. The federal bureaucracy, weaponized under the Obama administration, is dedicated to toppling anyone who stands against the perpetual growth of government. And last but not least, President Trump battles the swamp itself. The so-called ruling class of career politicians whose sole purpose is enriching themselves and winning the next election. Now, more than ever, President Trump and America need our help. But before you grow disheartened, let me remind you of a quote by Samuel Adams, who is spearheading a movement very much like our own. He said, "It does not take a majority to prevail, rather an irate and tireless minority, keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." Vic, after a year of broadcasting this show, I believe you should be thanked for spreading the torch of liberty far and wide.
Thank you, and I couldn't be more proud than I am of you, Duncan, because I see a star has been born tonight at this microphone. We have another of our stars, Joe Fieldis, who's under the weather, but joining us on the phone from his sick bed. And we have Joe on the air right now. Joe Fieldis.
Hi, guys. Sorry to miss the grand finale, but I got tackled by a bad bug from behind. I wanted to share a few things with our loyal audience tonight. First, Tony Ledbetter conceived of this show, and we wouldn't be talking right now except for Tony's vision. And it was the members of the Republican Executive Committee who voted unanimously to fund the show, and they deserve a big thank you. Teenage Republicans Duncan DeMarche, Malcolm Swaggerty, and Ian Escalante were a huge help. They are the next generation of conservative leadership. Also, tip of the hat to WNDB's ace soundman, Phil Kincaid. But folks, it was Vic Baker who brought Trump Talk Live to life. He put in hundreds and hundreds of hours producing and directing this show. It required a unique skill set to do it. Vic learned his craft in Buffalo, New York, working 40 years in the radio and television business. We were so fortunate to have him. I've seen up close how much work this show entails, and it's not easy. Vic did it as a labor of love. So well done to everyone. God bless all Trumpublicans that have been listening. We're winning, and we're going to keep winning. Vic, let's roll.
Joe, it's always been a pleasure and a privilege working alongside you, both in the Trump campaign and on this show, and we will be warriors on the campaign trail again together, and I look forward to your stalwart assistance in the efforts that we put forth. Thank you, Joe. Rest up and be well. Thank you. And I also want to extend my note of congratulations to the Republican Party of Volusia County. My personal thanks to Tony Ledbetter, who put his trust in me to do this project, and those of you in the party who decided to trust me with this major investment in our effort to tell the story of Donald Trump. I hope I've measured up to your expectations. We have to concentrate our efforts in the next year on electing solid Trumpublicans to public office at all levels, county, state, and federal. We may have to make sure that Donald Trump's mission is assuredly cemented into the core of American life stream. And so in order to do that, I have to devote my attention. I'll be working on a political campaign myself, and I'm not going to mention the name because I don't want to be accused of using this microphone for my advantage. But we will be working alongside you, knocking on doors, calling people, and preparing our message to make sure that we continue to do everything in our power to make America great again. We have almost 2 more hours of this show for you. We are going to talk a little bit after the break about the loss of a great spiritual leader, America's pastor, Billy Graham. And then, of course, we're going to talk a lot about what some students think about what should be done about the school shootings, as well as some parents and law enforcement people, and how the president is actually listening. That is all coming ahead as we continue with Trump Talk Live.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Don't go away. We'll return in a moment with more Trump Talk Live, where the truth will set us free.
Feeling stuck in a state of compensation stagnation? You know, another year with no raise. Then let State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand help you get to a better state with a discount double check that can stretch your hard-earned dollars a little farther. Sonia will go through your car insurance to make sure you're getting all the discounts you deserve. Discounts that could add up to 40% and put a few hundred extra dollars in your pocket. Sound good? Then get your budget to a better state by calling State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand today. Discounts may vary state to state.
Protecting data across modern decentralized networks presents challenges that traditional backup solutions can't handle. At best, you'll waste time and money managing multiple solutions. At worst, gaps in coverage will leave your data vulnerable. Barracuda Backup is a single cloud-integrated solution that simplifies the backup process and allows data replication to anywhere on your network, a private cloud, Barracuda's cloud, or to the AWS public cloud. Reclaim your data. Try Barracuda Backup free at barracuda.com/backup.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back to Trump Talk Live. It was with great sadness that we learned of the passing, after nearly a century of a wonderful life, of America's pastor, Billy Graham. President Trump described him as an American hero. As he said, the president, Billy's acceptance of Jesus Christ around his 17th birthday not only changed his life, but it changed the country and the world. He was one of the towering figures of the last 100 years, an American hero whose life and leadership truly earned him the title God's ambassador. Trump praised Graham's belief in God and his effort in spreading the Christian gospel around the world. He probably reached more people and converted more people to Christ than any other single human being since Christ himself, and perhaps even more then. Billy's unshakable belief in the power of God's word to transform hearts gave hope to all who listened to his simple message: God loves you, God forgives you. Accept Christ in your life, and your life is saved. Trump said that he got to know Graham and his family in recent years. He attended his 95th birthday party in 2013. And Billy Graham had a way of touching your heart with the gospel unlike anybody else. And as other people talked about him in the last few days, they talked about the reason it was so powerful coming from Billy Graham is it came purely out of his passion for what he believed. And it was a pure translation of Christ's love for the world and God's love for the world. And let's just for a moment take a minute to hear the wisdom of Billy Graham.
Man has a terminal disease. Sin is the transgression of the law. How many of the 10 Commandments have you kept? Try to name them. We haven't kept many of them. The scripture says, all we like sheep, we've gone astray. We've turned everyone to his own way. And the end of that kind of road is death and judgment and hell. The scripture says, for the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through our Lord Jesus Christ. We're alienated from God. We're under the sentence of death. Are you ready to die? Whether you're a young person here today or an old person like me, you'd better decide for Christ here and now, because you never know when your time is coming to leave this world.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Graham, pastor to presidents, counselors to men, power around the world, and a toucher of hearts, a man who converted literally millions of people to Jesus Christ. A gentle soul who preached love and forgiveness in an age where we have nothing but harshness and violence. And we need more Billy Grahams in this world and fewer gunmen like the one that caused that
Amen.
terrible nightmare at that school.
One of the things I'm appreciative for Billy Graham about was his, he taught often about virtue. And I like to use the word liberty. You'll probably notice a lot me using it in this broadcast. But the definition of liberty is freedom plus morality. And I'm very thankful that he really evangelized for Christ, but also for personal responsibility, for morality, and for virtue, because those are very important to our movement.
Yes, and he points out that in the Christian faith, we believe that, through Christ, who became of the flesh, God, he told a story in one case, in one instance, about how he's walking along with his son along a mountain path, and they accidentally stepped on an anthill. And he said that we probably destroyed a lot of ants. We didn't really mean to do it, but there was no way we could get down in that anthill and rebuild their anthill for them. We are to God what those ants are to us, he said. And God found a way to interact with us that we couldn't interact with the ants, and that was by sending his only son to become one of us. And that was a very beautiful way of explaining Christianity to people. Now, a nation grieves. Our president adopted a pastoral tone of his own after that horrible episode in Parkland. We now hear the school resource officer stood outside the school waiting for backup instead of stepping in to do his job. Who knows how many lives might have been saved had he stepped in and been a hero. But he wasn't a hero, and now he's resigned from his position. But the president spoke about it last week.
Our entire nation, with one heavy heart, is praying for the victims and their families. To every parent, teacher, and child who is hurting so badly, we are here for you, whatever you need, whatever we can do to ease your pain. We are all joined together as one American family, and your suffering is our burden also. No child, no teacher should ever be in danger in an American school. No parent should ever have to fear for their sons and daughters when they kiss them goodbye in the morning. Each person who was stolen from us yesterday had a full life ahead of them, a life filled with wondrous beauty and unlimited potential and promise. Each one had dreams to pursue, love to give, and talents to share with the world. And each one had a family to whom they meant everything in the world.
The president drew on the wisdom of the scriptures himself in speaking about this episode.
In these moments of heartache and darkness, we hold on to God's word in Scripture. I have heard your prayer and seen your tears. I will heal you. We trust in that promise, and we hold fast to our fellow Americans in their time of sorrow.
The president is a grandfather and a father. He addressed the children of America.
I want to speak now directly to America's children, especially those who feel lost, alone, confused, or even scared. I want you to know that you are never alone and you never will be. You have people who care about you, who love you, and who will do anything at all to protect you. If you need help, turn to a teacher, a family member, a local police officer, or a faith leader. Answer hate with love, answer cruelty with kindness. We must also work together to create a culture in our country that embraces the dignity of life, that creates deep and meaningful human connections, and that turns classmates and colleagues into friends and neighbors.
And the president was already directing his attention to ways we can do something to protect our children.
We are committed to working with state and local leaders to help secure our schools and tackle the difficult issue of mental health. Later this month, I will be meeting with the nation's governors and attorney generals. Where making our schools and our children safer will be our top priority. It is not enough to simply take actions that make us feel like we are making a difference. We must actually make that difference. In times of tragedy, the bonds that sustain us are those of family, faith, community, and country. These bonds are stronger than the forces of hatred and evil, and these bonds grow even stronger in the hours of our greatest need.
Now, you can say what you want, Duncan, about this president, and many people say some pretty horrible things about him. But I defy any other president to have said it any better than Donald Trump did. And he said what needed to be said to the nation at this time. He offered pastoral comfort, he offered leadership, he offered his own compassion to these people. What more do they want of this president? Really? I mean, he's trying to fix the problem. He's a man who looks at a problem and says, how do we fix it? What's going to work and what's not going to work? So when we get into this raging debate over gun control that's going to continue in the show, let's think about solutions instead of simple answers that address us emotionally. We are welcoming your phone calls on this, our final episode, 2-hour episode of Trump Talk Live at 239-0033. You're welcome to call in and join the conversation. Now, the President of the United States hosted children, their parents, people whose lives have been touched by school violence to the White House yesterday. And he sat and listened for a good part of this. He didn't do much of the talking at all. Duncan, did you hear any of that?
I did. I got to not only watch that, but the CNN. And I can say this is especially close to home for Malcolm and I and the rest of the teenage Republicans because we are high school students.
That's right. What's your perspective on all this? Let's listen to you for a while now.
It's got to be one of the most heartbreaking things that I've ever experienced. It was hard for me to watch that CNN show last night that detailed events that occurred. Many of my friends at school are understandably emotional and upset, and I am too. It's so sad that people who had my age, who had their whole lives in front of them, were killed, and I don't think we'll ever be able to get over how awful these shootings are, and I really hope that I can live to see a time where they don't happen anymore. And I know we disagree on how we are going to stop them, but at least we all agree that they need to stop. And I think we all agree that there has to be some kind of action.
Now, we'll talk through that as we go through these various comments that we're going to hear from the people in the listening session. We're getting up close to time for a break, in which I think maybe what we're going to do, to give us more time on the other side, we may take it a little bit sooner. Welcome your phone calls at 239-0033 locally here on Trump Talk Live. We would welcome your comments on this. And we're going to start into the president's listening session at the White House and listen to some heartfelt testimony from people who know closer than anybody exactly what a heartless killer can do to break people's hearts when Trump Talk Live returns.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Keep your radio, phone app, or computer right where it is. We'll return in a moment with more Trump Talk Live, melting liberal lies 1 hour at a time.
At Fields, we're known for our complimentary loaners. Hello, I'm Dan Fields, and now we're offering loaners you can take home and keep.
It's Fields Loaner Sales Event.
We're offering every low-mileage current loaner at every Fields location to be sold to the public. These are late-model cars with the balance of their factory warranty and only have a few thousand miles on them. They've been hand-picked, pampered, and checked over, so our customers can drive them with peace of mind. And now, you can buy or lease a loaner for less like this.
Take over $6,000 off on select service loaners at Fields Volvo Cars of Daytona Beach. Plus, save big on a great selection of low-mileage demos.
And when you become part of the Fields family, you get, of course, complimentary loaners, car washes, and our gourmet cafes. Plus, much, much more.
Fields Volvo Cars of Daytona Beach. See Fields first at fieldsvolvocarsofdaytonabeach.com. Offer ends 2/28/18.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Hi, welcome back. Before we get started here, let's just thank our sponsors who've been with us. Sonia Mori, your State Farm agent in DeLand, has been with us from the very first Trump Talk Live show. She's been our sponsor for every episode. We are so ever grateful to her for her support and the vote of confidence she gave us for this effort. So thank you, Sonia. We thank Keith Milne at Milne Roofing, keeps a safe roof over your head, for his support, and also Mary Marino, Marino's Pizza, the best pizza in the land, so I'm told, and I'm sure I would know if I lived in the land how to compare. But
I live there, and it's excellent.
Yes, okay. That's a good vote of confidence for Marino's Pizza. We have on the phone from Deltona tonight, Daniel, joining the conversation. Daniel, welcome to Trump Talk Live.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to say congratulations on a very successful year. I haven't always been able to listen, but when I have, you've never failed to disappoint.
Well, thank you, Daniel.
So, very sad to see you off the air, but it's been great. I'd like to make 2 points. First, I'll admit that during the election, I was not in any way a Trump fan. But over the past few months, I don't think I think President Trump's made an incredible impact. And he's shown that he's willing to get things done, like he promised. So it's, I think that's one thing that we could look back upon and see that he is one of the best presidents that we've had since President Reagan, just because of the fact that he's willing to work with both sides. And the second thing I'd like to say is the CNN town hall last night, I wouldn't really call it a town hall. It was more like a debate. But I know what it's like to be blamed or called out and blamed for someone's death. I know what it's like to I know what it's like to stand in the middle of a lion's den and have to defend my position in front of people that disagree with me. And it takes a lot of courage to stand in the middle of a lion's den and have to fight for what you believe in. So I think what Senator Rubio did last night, it was very courageous, and I think it gives me a lot of hope for the future. President Trump's willing to, work with Congress on gun control, and I'm very excited to see the solutions that are going to come out of this event.
Well, Daniel, I appreciate your comments, very astute, and we thank you for calling in to share them with us, and hope you'll continue listening for the rest of the show. Thank you for calling in.
And if I could point out,
yes.
you might not have been able to tell by his deep voice, but Daniel Elliott is another teenage Republican. He's the president of the DeLand High School Teenage Republicans, very active, and it's great to have him call on. He's a voice of wisdom for sure.
Great, and we appreciated your comments, Daniel. Thank you for calling in. All right, Trump's emotional listening session at the White House. I mean, once again, he stepped up and did something that people didn't expect. And once again, he fulfilled the expectation we have of our presidents for providing leadership. He is at some point going to come up with a plan. He shared some of his thoughts after hearing some of the testimony from folks who were so deeply affected by the tragedy in Florida. We're going to hear from some of those folks who were at this White House listening session yesterday. We're going to start out by hearing from President Trump. He just briefly had a short comment to start off.
We're going to do something about this horrible situation that's going on. We're going to all figure it out together. So I want to listen, and then after I listen, we're going to get things done.
Now, his Education Secretary, Betsy DeVos, let's go back on camera. Betsy DeVos, the Education Secretary, hosted all these folks at the Education Department for lunch, had a thorough discussion with her before this happened, And then they came to the White House to sit down with the president. Here's what Betsy had to say as the session got underway.
We are here to have an earnest conversation about why this tragedy and too many others before it happened and how we can work to find solutions. We're here to listen, to gain your important perspective on ways to reduce violence and to protect students. And your loss and your trauma must never be in vain.
Then we heard from a student whose name is Julie, and she's from that school. And she told her story to the president.
My name is Julia Cordover, and I'm from Stoneman Douglas High School, and I was there during the shooting, and I'm a survivor. And I want you guys all to emphasize the point that I survived. I was lucky enough to come home from school, unlike some of my other classmates and teachers. And it's very scary, and knowing that a lot of people did not have this opportunity to be here still is mind-blowing. And I feel like there is a lot to do, and I really appreciate you hosting me and what you were saying. I'm confident that you'll do the right thing, and I appreciate you looking at the bump stocks yesterday. That means it is definitely a step in the right direction, and I think we can all agree on that. There's definitely a lot more to go, but I am just grateful that I'm here, and we can try to work out something, maybe compromise on some solutions, so this never no child, no person in this world will ever have to go something through so horrific and tragic, and my thoughts and prayers are out to everyone there, so thank you.
It breaks your heart to hear these voices, Duncan. There's another young man named Jonathan Blank who goes to Stoneman Douglas, and he spoke to the president. Let's hear Jonathan.
I go to Stoneman Douglas, and I was actually in the second classroom that was shot at. In my mind, as a kid, nothing ever that horrible should ever have to happen to you, and you can't even think about it. Like, it doesn't even seem real still. Everything seems fake. I don't even know what's going on. It's just crazy, everything happening. It's just so tragic. Thank you for everything. You've done a great job, and I like the direction that you're going in. Thank you.
The president then heard from Jonathan's mother, Melissa, who's a teacher's aide, and her heart goes out. I mean, her son survived this, but she knows many parents were not so lucky.
For all of these families, my heart is just broken for my whole community. We're coming together. I feel for all the families who have lost, and I feel for the ones that are here, because we now have almost a guilt like I have. Why not my child? Which I feel bad saying. I'm happy that he's here with me, but I feel so bad for all of you who have lost so many. And I'm just begging for a change. We need a change.
We then heard from a young woman named Carson Apt, a student from Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, who had her take on what happened, and she explained it to the president.
I know that there are a lot of different solutions that we can go through to help eradicate this issue, but one that stuck out to me was about all the drills and protocols that my teachers had to go through. They knew what to do once the code red for an active shooter was announced, but through research I found that only 32 states require drills. But of those 32 states, more than half of the counties do not go through the drills because they want to spend their resources towards something else. And I know that a bill was also passed that declared that each school has to go through one drill each month. But I know that my school, we go through fire drills every month, and we have not had our lockdown drill yet this year. And I think a change that will increase all the trainings and protocols, so if God forbid another shooting does happen, at least all the teachers will be prepared and can hopefully keep their students calm.
So, Duncan, Every one of the students seems to have an open mind about what needs to be done. The one thing that they're all saying is do something, right?
Absolutely, and I really feel for them, and I applaud their bravery. It's got to be, I mean, it would be hard to speak in front of the president on a normal occasion. Imagine doing it after this. I'm nervous talking on the radio. They're there in front of the whole world at the White House. So they really are brave, and I think it's amazing that they're standing up for the classmates that they lost. I personally, as a high school student, even before this, I've been wary of the protections that we have. I go to the airport, there's scanners. You go to a bank, there's security guards. I mean, it seems like we protect everything but our schools. And it concerns me because we are really sitting ducks in there. And it sounds awful for me to say that, but it's true. I'm not criticizing the administration. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm just saying maybe it's time we took a look at this. I am reminded of a quote that I've always found pretty interesting. It says, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is to have a good guy with a gun. I've heard some talks about getting door stops so they can't bust the doors open, curtains over the windows, stuff like that. I think that is good, but we really need to take some decisive action. I think we should allow, like the president said, I think we should allow teachers who have military training to perhaps carry on campus. I would certainly feel a lot safer. I know I have some great Marine Corps, Air Force veterans who are teachers at my school, and I mean, why not? What do we have to lose? It's already so bad as it is. I would feel much safer with having those American heroes armed.
I agree, and we'll have more of that part of the discussion coming up. We also heard from Ariana Klein, who was a young woman who told her heartfelt story to the president yesterday.
My name is Ariana Klein. I would just like to say thank you for leading this country. You're a great leader, and I appreciate the direction that the country is going in. I'm a junior. I attended Stoneman Douglas, and I just want to say that everybody right now is so stuck on what they believe that they're not even listening to what other people believe. We need to listen to the other points of views. We all need to realize that we all have different points of views, and that this solution is not going to be a singular thing. It's going to be multifaceted, and it's going to be created by a collection of different people working together, and we all have to realize that we all have our opinions, and together we're going to be able to work to a solution. And this is not just Parkland anymore. This is America. This is every student in every city and everywhere. It's everybody. It's not small. It's everything.
Listen to the heartbreak in those voices again. Now Justin, a young man who is scared. He's scared. You could taste the fear in his voice. Listen.
My name is Justin Gruber, and I was at the school at the time of the massacre. I'm only 15 years old. I'm a sophomore. 19 years ago, the first school shooting at Columbine High School happened, and I was born into a world where I never got to experience safety and peace. There needs to be a significant change in this country because this has to never happen again. And people should be able to feel that when they go to school, they can be safe. And because there needs to be a change, people need to feel safe, and parents shouldn't have to go through the idea of losing their child. As I know, for my dad, he was panicking, and he couldn't imagine it. So that shouldn't even be a possibility. That should go through a parent's mind, and there needs to be some change. Thank you.
Now let's hear from Justin's dad, who had something to say.
You know, Justin was texting me, hiding in a closet, saying, if something happens, I love you. Something happens, I love you. And you can't imagine what that's like as a parent. And then his phone died, and I didn't know what happened for another hour or so. So 17 lives were gone. I was lucky enough to get my son home, but 17 families It's not left and right. It's not political. It's a human issue. People are dying, and we have to stop this. We have to stop. If he's not old enough to buy a drink, to go and buy a beer, he should not be able to buy a gun at 18 years old.
With that father's heartfelt message, we will go to the break and come back with a father who lost his daughter at the school, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, when Trump Talk Live returns.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Don't leave us. We'll be right back after a brief break with more Trump Talk Live, fighting truth decay day after day.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. I'm often asked to describe myself. It's an interesting question. For over 30 years, my fights have been against giants, insurance companies, the makers of unsafe products, tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, BP in the great oil spill, and companies who defraud consumers and their own employees. I fight the powerful for the powerless, and our results speak for themselves. We have recovered billions and billions and billions of dollars for our clients, $1.2 billion in one case alone. I risk millions of dollars of my own money in case costs fighting these wrongdoers. I spent $10 million in Florida to pass a constitutional amendment to allow sick and injured people to use medical marijuana. I would describe myself as a fighter who hates to lose. If you want a fighter, call me on your cell phone at pound law. That's pound 529. Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com. Offices, Daytona Beach.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back, and we're going to hear from a father of a girl who was killed at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. His name is Andrew Pollack. He grabbed the microphone to tell the president what he thought about the school shootings. You could hear it pin drop when this man spoke. Let's listen to Andrew Pollack.
Because my daughter has no voice. She was murdered last week, and she was taken from us. Shot 9 times on the 3rd floor. We, as a country, failed our children. This shouldn't happen. We go to the airport. I can't get on a plane with a bottled water, but we leave it. Some animal could walk into a school and shoot our children. It's just not right, and we need to come together as a country and work on what's important, and that's protecting our children in the schools. That's the only thing that matters right now. Everyone has to come together and not think about different laws. We need to come together as a country, not different parties, and figure out how we protect the schools. It's simple. It's not difficult. We protect airports. We protect concerts, stadiums, embassies, the Department of Education that I walked in today that has a security guard in the elevator. How do you think that makes me feel? In the elevator, they got a security guard. I'm very angry that this happened because it keeps happening. 9/11 happened once and they fixed everything. How many schools, how many children have to get shot? It stops here with this administration and me. I'm not gonna sleep until it's fixed.
Until it's fixed. That man had some passion, standing with his 3 sons, who were also students and who have survived, but they lost their sister. He lost his daughter. He said, when I want to visit my daughter now, I have to go to the cemetery. How many parents have to go to the cemetery to visit their children until we start protecting our children? As he said, you know, we spent all this money guarding banks. We put our money behind guards, armored cars. We protect our jewelry stores. Our children are more precious than anything. And we're not going to spend the money on it for the school budget? You know, could you get by with a fewer administrators maybe and put some more guards in the schools? Maybe there's an idea. Maybe we can learn from this experience, but we're not learning fast enough. Listen to Sam Zeif, a student. It'll break your heart listening to what he has to say.
I was on the second floor in that building, texting my mom, texting my dad, texting 3 of my brothers, that I was never going to see him again. And then it occurred to me that my 14-year-old brother was directly above me in that classroom where Scott Beagle was murdered. Scott Beagle got my brother in the class. He was the last kid to get back into that class. And I'm sure a lot of you have read my texts on the internet with my brother. I didn't plan for them to go viral. I just wanted to share with the world, because no brothers or sisters or family members or anyone should ever have to share those texts with anyone. And that's why I'm here. I lost a best friend who's practically a brother. And I'm here to use my voice because I know he can't. And I know he's with me, cheering me on to be strong, but it's hard. And to feel like this, it doesn't even feel like a week. Time has stood still. To feel like this ever, I can't feel comfortable in my country knowing that people will have, ever gonna feel like this. And I wanna feel safe at school. You know, senior year and junior year, they were big years for me when I turned my academics around, started connecting with teachers, and I started actually enjoying school. And now, I don't know how I'm ever gonna step foot on that place again.
Your thoughts, Duncan, after hearing that?
The more I hear it, the more sad I get. He was just talking about senior year and how he started to reach out and make new friends. I'm going through that right now. Our senior retreat's coming up. It's unbelievable how close this hits to home. But what makes me even angrier is that when I recently, almost 30 minutes ago, I got an iPhone update that told me something very disturbing. The armed deputy who was outside, who arrived within minutes.
Or he was supposedly on duty then.
On duty, apparently.
Yeah, he was the resource officer for
and
the
he
school,
did
for the
not
sheriff's
go in the
office.
school. He heard it happening. There was a good person there who was trained to solve this scenario, and he didn't go in. And people died because of it.
You know, he has since resigned.
I think he should. It's very, very sad.
That is a huge embarrassment. The sheriff's office also had 39 separate calls, trouble calls, to this young man, Nicholas Cruz's home, for all kinds of violent behavior, threats, intimidation, gun incidents, one thing. 39 different calls. And the FBI, that's been chasing Russian trolls for the past year and a half, had 2 tips, specific tips, that this guy was planning to do a school shoot-up. And they dropped the ball. They admitted that they dropped the ball. Now, you can have 1,000 laws against lawbreakers like this. If the law enforcement people don't do their part of it, I'm not saying most law enforcement, I'm saying in this instance, there were cases here where the ball got dropped. And you wonder, you know, if he hadn't fallen through the cracks in the system, whether this might have been prevented.
Another interesting thing to bring up is the Charleston church shooter was a convicted felon who, under existing gun laws, should not have been able to purchase a weapon, but due to a mistake made by the FBI, he was able to, and he committed that act. Why is it that every time the government fails, the left proposes increasing government? Maybe the solution, which we have yet to try, is more freedom. Let's empower free people to protect themselves on school campuses, like my teachers. Let's empower my Marine Corps veteran teacher to protect me. I think that's a great solution.
Well, yes, and you're certainly somebody in that position to be able to make that kind of observation. Now, do we have a phone call, Phil? No, okay. All right, now, there was a dad at the session. I don't have his name in front of me, but you want to listen to him because here is what reason can apply. Even after all this emotion, this dad applied some very reasonable thoughts about what we should do that might work. Let's listen to him speaking to the president.
I could tell you that in addition to all of the sorrow that we're feeling in our community right now, there's also a lot of anger. Anger that the police can visit a person dozens of times and not take action. Anger that the FBI could get at least 2 credible tips and not take action. And one possible solution, which we discussed with Secretary DeVos over lunch, was if a tragedy strikes, can we wait for the first responders to get to the campus 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 minutes later? And one possible solution, which may not be very popular, would be to have people in the school, teachers, administrators, who have volunteered to have a firearm safely locked in the classroom, who are given training throughout the year. There are plenty of teachers that are already licensed to carry firearms. Have them raise their hands to volunteer for the training, and when something like this starts, the first responders are already on campus. And if it's not the teachers, you could have people that work on the campus. A custodian could be an undercover policeman. Someone who works in the library or the lunchroom could be an undercover policeman. He serves lunch every day, but he also has a firearm at the ready. A guidance counselor. If you can't stop it from happening, and with hundreds of millions of guns out there, I don't know if it'll ever be fully stopped, but the challenge becomes, once it starts, to end it as quickly as possible. And just, unfortunately, you can't wait 5 or 6 or 7 minutes. And what my daughter said earlier, that there are 32 states that have laws that require the schools to prepare for this. And yet more than half the county, and Broward County is one of them, and our school was prepared. And thank God it was only 17 lives. But when more than half of the counties won't spend the money out of their budget for the training, even though the law says they should, it'll be that many more the next time. So between having the schools train for lockdowns and possibly having armed personnel, staff that are willing to do it, yeah, anonymously. I don't want the kids to know who have the firearms. I don't want the shooters to know who have the firearms. I don't want people walking around with firearms on their side. But when that alert goes off and they put the kids in the closets and they put the kids under the desks, then I want the teacher to open that safe, pull out that firearm, and be ready to do what needs to be done while you're waiting for the helicopters and the SWAT teams to come.
Now, Senator Marco Rubio, Duncan, opposes the president's idea about arming teachers and your idea. He makes the scenario that, well, hey, the SWAT team doesn't know who is who, so they may shoot the teacher, leading to an additional tragedy that was unnecessary. Well, this analysis from our Hawkins says lost in Rubio's scenario are 2 things. Number 1, schools could keep specific lists of which teachers were armed, lists responding enforcement could access so they'd know who should have a gun. He overlooked the agonizingly long minutes which pass between the time the attack starts and the time the SWAT team enters the building. At Sandy Hook, the attacker had over 9 minutes without any armed resistance from anybody. What are unarmed teachers to do for 9 minutes other than, panic, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is it not safe to say that every death that occurs during that time is unnecessary? Of course. President Trump observed that the status quo wherein teachers are denied arms is not working. CNN quoted him as saying gun-free zones to a maniac because they're all cowards. A gun-free zone is let's go and let's attack because bullets aren't coming back at us. I have to agree with that. There's no resistance, so why would they worry about going into a school? It's an easy target.
When second counts, police are only minutes away.
That's correct. Well, and they're minutes away, and those minutes are critical between life and death. We've seen it. We'll be back with another hour of Trump Talk Live after the news, so please stay with us for the final hour of Trump Talk Live. Coming up.
1250 WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned, a Southern Stone station.
He never went inside. I'm Lisa Lacera, Fox News. New information about the actions of the police officer on duty at a Florida high school where 17 people were gunned down last week. Fox's Steve Rappaport has this live.
Lisa, Officer Scott Peterson's decision to wait for backup during the shooting used to be standard procedure for law enforcement, but that changed with the implementation of active shooter training.
What I saw was a deputy arrive at the west side of Building 12, take up a position, and he never went in.
Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel saying Peterson's inaction left him devastated and sick to his stomach. The school resource officer resigned after being suspended without pay and placed under investigation. Lisa?
Steve, earlier today, President Trump holding a listening session with Florida school officials on gun control.
The president really being forceful on this idea that schools are soft targets, that the idea of gun-free zones is, as the president put it, quote, nonsense, and that things need to change, and that he believes, and he said this repeatedly, the way to address it is ensure that certain qualified individuals who are on the school staff, now they could be teachers, they could be administrative staff, he even said yesterday they could be janitors, are licensed to carry a concealed weapon and trained how to use it in an aggressive situation where you'd have to be defending against a shooter.
Fox's John Roberts at the White House. Senator Ted Cruz saying gun control will not stop mass shootings.
You want to see crime take off? Disarm the law-abiding citizens. The criminals love it when law-abiding citizens can't defend themselves.
Cruz speaking this morning to the Conservative Political Action Committee at their meeting outside Washington. Missouri's Republican House leader is forming a group to investigate Governor Ed Greitens after his indictment on a felony invasion of privacy charge. Fox News, fair and balanced.
I'm in almost every school bus and classroom. I go to school with your children. We say the Pledge of Allegiance together. You see me around the neighborhood and you tell me that I'm a pretty good kid. Well, I'm one out of every 5 children in America, and I'm struggling with hunger. This problem is closer than you think. My teacher tells me we can grow up to be whatever we want. I want to grow up to be someone who doesn't go to bed hungry. There's enough food in this country to feed everybody. Please visit feedingamerica.org today and find your local food bank for ways to help. Every dollar you donate helps provide 8 meals for kids like me, quietly struggling with hunger. Together, we are Feeding America, brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
The opinions expressed on this show are those of the participants, the hosts, the guests, and the callers, and do not necessarily reflect the opinions and views of Southern Stone Communications, WNDB Radio, its employees, and friends. Comments regarding WNDB's programming can be addressed to D. Lang at DaytonaRadio.com.
Live from Daytona Beach, Florida, bringing a voice to America's forgotten working class. Speaking the truth about the D.C. swamp dwellers and the deep state. Making America great again in the face of fierce resistance. This is Trump Talk Live, where we the people have the right voice. Presented by the Republican Party of Volusia County. Here are your Trumpublican hosts for the final 2-hour episode, Vic Baker and Joe Fieldus.
Welcome to the second and final hour of Trump Talk Live. This will be the last hour of Trump Talk Live ever, unless we come back on the air in the future, but this is it for the year. We are continuing our discussion of the school massacre in Parkland, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas School, and President Trump's listening session at the White House. He concluded, after hearing all the comments you heard in the previous hour, by basically saying that these gun-free school zones are really just a delusion. There's no such thing as a gun-free zone. Nature as Duncan has gone to school and probably took some physics, they will teach you nature abhors a vacuum. If you leave an empty space for something, something will come to fill it, right? If you leave something unguarded, then somebody's going to use a gun in that space. And that is pretty much common sense, but some people don't seem to possess it. The problem with something like this is we're rent with emotion. We're so heartbroken for people who have been aggrieved by the loss of a loved one, the pain, the suffering, the death, that sometimes we just don't think it through rationally. We can't do that initially, and that's understandable. We need to step back and let people grieve. But when the dust settles from all this and we get past it, we have to figure out how to fix it. Donald Trump is a guy that looks at problems and tries to fix them. So Duncan, here's how he spoke at the end of that listening session after hearing all this. And he spoke after listening quietly to all these people and getting a full measure.
It only works where you have people very adept at using firearms, of which you have many. And it would be teachers and coaches. If the coach had a firearm in his locker when he ran at this guy, that coach was very brave. Saved a lot of lives, I suspect. But if he had a firearm, he wouldn't have had to run. He would have shot, and that would have been the end of it. And this would only be, obviously, for people that are very adept at handling a gun. And it would be, it's called concealed carry, where a teacher would have a concealed gun on them. They'd go for special training, and they would be there, and you would no longer have a gun-free zone. Gun-free zone to a maniac, because they're all cowards. A gun-free zone is let's go in and let's attack, because bullets aren't coming back at us. And if you do this, and a lot of people are talking about it, and it's certainly a point that we'll discuss, but concealed carry for teachers and for people of talent, of that type of talent. So let's say you had 20% of your teaching force, because that's pretty much the number. And you said it, an attack has lasted, on average, about 3 minutes. It takes 5 to 8 minutes for responders, for the police to come in. So the attack is over. If you had a teacher who was adept at firearms, they could very well end the attack very quickly.
So that's our president reaffirming your position, Duncan, and he seems to think the same as you do about that. And
as a high school student, I'm glad to have the support of the president for sure. I think it's time we began protecting ourselves and what I'm sure a lot of adults would consider to be some of our most valuable assets, our children. So.
Well, there's no question. Our children are our most valuable asset. And, I'm an old guy, so I went to high school at a time when such a thing would have been completely unthinkable, and nothing like that ever happened at a high school. I went to a high school in a small town in western New York called Hornell, little railroad town. And the worst that ever happened at school is you had a little bullying incident or something like that, a little fist fight or something. But guns, knives, that sort of thing, that just didn't happen in our day and age. We had a different environment. If you misbehaved at school and got suspended, generally speaking, the parents would step up and the kids would be subjected to a certain amount of retribution by the parents. Parents were absolutely mortified if they got to the school on a disciplinary matter. We live in an age, Duncan, let's talk about this too. Let's talk about the media that we're exposed to, okay? You've got social media, you've got Twitter, you've got Snapchat, you've got all these other things, and Malcolm's here on the other side. He knows about all that stuff. You guys spend a lot of time on your smartphones. You're connected to each other all the time, but you also have a lot of these video games that some of the young folks play that are extremely violent. Now, the Supreme Court has already held, and actually I helped a young girl do a research paper on that very subject, or young man, trying to research the idea of passing a law that would restrict these video games to be less violent, when in fact what it is a creative license sort of a thing. It's a free First Amendment sort of thing. The way you control it is not by outlawing a video game any more than you control it by outlawing a gun. The way you control it is by preventing people from doing such things to other people, Mm-hmm. The Volstead Act of more than a century ago outlawed, by an amendment to the United States Constitution, outlawed alcohol, okay? There was no mafia, per se, in the United States, no organized crime in that sense, before Prohibition entered in. When Prohibition was enacted, then the mafia was given birth. There was a huge profit motive to define that law. People wanted alcohol. They couldn't get it, so what did they do? You know what they did, Duncan? They broke the law.
Mm-hmm.
They went to speakeasies and they drank moonshine, gin, whatever, in these speakeasies. There were all sorts of tunnels and secret passageways, and places were concealed from the police, and police were bought off in various cities, and they were running whiskey. The Kennedy family got wealthy running whiskey into the United States. There were many families that got wealthy doing the very same thing, bringing whiskey and other alcohol in from Canada, or rum in from Cuba to Florida, you know? So when
That's an exceptionally good point, because I actually have a statistic here that proves that stricter gun control does not guarantee or even statistically correlate with lower gun homicide rates. Here's a prominent example from FBI data. Texas and California. Texas is an open carry state. California, it's hard to buy ammunition, have comparable gun homicide rates each year. They were actually tied in 2015. So you have almost a unregulated Second Amendment in Texas and a almost completely regulated Second Amendment in California, yet their gun homicide rates are the same.
There's also the example of Chicago, where they have very strict gun control, and that is one of the most, Chicago's a murder city. I mean, it happens, it's not uncommon to have 5 homicides a day, you know, in Chicago, 5 or 10. It's a very common thing. And so the restriction on gun ownership doesn't seem to affect the people that don't abide by any laws whatsoever. What you need is effective police enforcement against violent crimes. Also, passing additional laws that make additional crimes for doing what is essentially the same thing, taking human life, seems to be a redundancy that gums up the legal process. Murder is murder. Dead is dead. Injured is injured. So, I mean, how much of a different crime is it? If you have the appropriate application of law for people who harm and kill other people, then, and if you enforce it correctly, and if the police are diligent, then certainly the existing laws on the books can do the job. But the point is, are we doing the job?
And what Chicago's gun laws have given us is the gangbangers, they don't follow any laws. They don't follow traffic laws. They don't follow drug laws. They definitely don't follow gun laws. So they don't care. They carry no matter what. But now we have the single mother who's walking to work or having a hard time, and she's afraid she's going to get mugged, and she can go to jail for trying to defend herself. I think that's wrong. I think we should empower smart, trained, free people to protect themselves and work very hard to punish the criminals who ruin it for the rest of us.
We welcome you to join our conversation. You can call us at 239-0033 to join the conversation with Trump Talk Live during the last 45 minutes of our time on the air here at WNDB. And we will return with more of our show in just a moment.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Stay with us for more fearless truth-telling on Trump Talk Live, making America great again.
Feeling stuck in a state of compensation stagnation? You know, another year with no raise. Then let State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand help you get to a better state with a discount double check that can stretch your hard-earned dollars a little farther. Sonia will go through your car insurance to make sure you're getting all the discounts you deserve. Discounts that could add up to 40% and put a few $100 extra in your pocket. Sound good? Then get your budget to a better state by calling State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand today. Discounts may vary state to state.
It's the time of year for weddings, class reunions, family reunions. You'll need a great smile and great dance moves. Get that great smile with Zoom Whitening at Florida Family Dentistry. It's a fast, effective, and safe way to whiten and brighten your smile, and you'll see results in as little as 45 minutes. Zoom Whitening will not, however, make you a better dancer. For that, you'll need lessons. But for a brighter smile, all you need is to make the call to Florida Family Dentistry in Ormond and Palm Coast, 386-445-1234.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back to Trump Talk Live. The NRA's Wayne LaPierre and national spokeswoman Dana Lash, who got lashed herself pretty hard at the CNN town hall. We'll talk about that a little after this NRA stuff. They were at the CPAC conference in Washington today and spoke, and it was pretty strong stuff. And the National Rifle Association Executive Director and CEO Wayne LaPierre opened a busy schedule at the CPAC conference. In the wake of the Parkland, Florida school shooting, LaPierre criticized the failure of the FBI to follow up on a tip about the suspect. He blamed media coverage of shootings and liberal critics who think gun control is a simple one-size-fits-all answer. He says they don't care if their laws work or not. They just want to get more laws to get more control over people. But the NRA does care. And in fact, the NRA even offers free training for schools to set up the very kind of protections and harden the targets that we've talked about. So let's listen to what Dana Lash had to say to the CPAC folks in Washington this morning. She told them that the Broward County Sheriff dropped the ball. We need to guard our schools more effectively and screen for would-be killers. Let's listen.
Could change this tomorrow. They could change it today. But they won't, because they're exploiting a tragedy for an agenda. Shame on you. We call BS. Here's a stat for you. From 1950 to July of 2016, 98.4% of mass shootings have taken place in gun-free zones. You know, I was sitting on that stage with the Broward County Sheriff, and the toughest question I was asking this man, how did you fail 39 times? They had a law enforcement go to this murderer's house 39 times. He was caught taking bullets and knives in a backpack to his school. He had threatened repeatedly to shoot up his school. He was out there in plain sight using his name on social media accounts, sending messages to students that violated a Florida state statute that meant that sheriff could have gone to his house that night and it had him involuntarily committed. Why didn't he? Why didn't you, Sheriff? That's not the NRA's job. That's yours.
Yeah. Well, don't make that lady mad at you. I mean, she knows how to target the truth, right?
Absolutely.
Then Wayne LaPierre, the National Executive Director of the NRA, took to the stage. And he said that the left is politicizing this by going after law-abiding gun owners instead of the lawbreakers. A familiar tune. Let's listen.
Saul Alinsky would have been proud. The breakback speed of calls for more gun control laws, and the breathless national media eager to smear the NRA. Think about that. In the midst of genuine grief and a very understandable passion, as millions of Americans search for meaningful solutions, what do we find? Chris Murphy, Nancy Pelosi, and more, cheered on by the national media, eager to blame the NRA and call for even more government control. They hate the NRA. They hate the Second Amendment. They hate individual freedom. In the rush of calls for more government, they've also revealed their true selves. The elites don't care not one whit about America's school system and school children. If they truly cared, what they would do is they would protect them. For them, it's not a safety issue, it's a political issue.
And he says we're leaving our kids as targets. Basically bait for nut jobs in gun-free zones.
Our banks, our airports, our NBA games, our NFL games, our office buildings, our movie stars, our politicians, they're all more protected than our children at school. Does that make any sense to anybody? Do we really love our money and our celebrities more than we love our children? Can we answer that question honestly? Any of us. Can we answer that question honestly, knowing that we surround and protect so much with armed security while we drop our kids off at school that are so-called gun-free zones that are wide-open targets for any crazy madman bent on evil to come there first?
And it's as obvious as the nose on your face. What's in front of us? Wayne, tell us.
Evil walks among us, and God help us if we don't harden our schools and protect our kids. The whole idea from some of our opponents that armed security makes us less safe is completely ridiculous. If that's true, and just think about this, if that's true, armed security makes us less safe, let's just go ahead and remove it from everywhere. Let's remove it from the White House, from Capitol Hill, and remove it from all of Hollywood. Any American school that needs immediate professional consultation and help with organizing and defining these solutions should call the National Rifle Association School Shield Program. And we will provide immediate assistance, and we will also provide it absolutely free to any school in America.
Wow. He talked about President Obama's role in all this. What has President Obama done to set the stage for this in the past 8 years?
Obama promised a fundamental transformation of our country. And you know what? It began with his own national party, a party that is now infested with saboteurs who don't believe in capitalism, don't believe in the Constitution, don't believe in our freedom, and don't believe in America as we know it. Obama may be gone, but their utopian dream, it marches on.
Now, a little-known fact. Wayne LaPierre shares a little-known fact about what the NRA did about background checks.
And you never hear this on the national media. So I want to say it to all of you now, and I need your help in telling all of America this because it's the truth. The National Rifle Association originated the National Instant Check System. It was our bill. No one on the prohibited persons list should ever have access to a firearm. No killer, no felon, no drug dealer.
And your children are left exposed because of all this.
Every day, young children are being dropped off at schools that are virtually wide open, soft targets for anyone bent on mass murder. It should not be easier for a madman to shoot up a school than a bank or a jewelry store or some Hollywood gala. Schools must be the most hardened targets in this country. And evil must be confronted immediately with all necessary force to protect our kids.
And a note to our listeners, including Ray Sanchez, who's out there. I know you're listening, Ray. Yeah, we're accepting phone calls at 239-0033. If you want to call in and join the conversation, Ray or anyone else, we'll welcome your calls. Absolutely. So, absolutely insane. CNN has a town hall meeting, but it was not spontaneous. It was pre-scripted. They failed to press the Broward County Sheriff over new reports that local police knew Nicholas Cruz used a gun against people before, and they also tried to pre-script questions to the point where a censored ROTC hero refused to appear because he could not get on the town hall without reading the question they told him he had to ask.
And one thing I'd like to point out, people often vilify the National Rifle Association, but when I was 13 years old and involved in Boy Scouts, they took a ton of us and for free took us through the Hunter Safety course, which teaches you everything you need to know, one, about how to properly handle a weapon, but also about the Constitution and about the sanctity of life.
And the sanctity of life especially.
They will give that to any American, regardless of age, for free.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have Ray Sanchez on the phone, I believe, calling in. Ray, welcome to Trump Talk Live, the final episode.
Welcome. Thank you so much, Vic, and congratulations on not only a great show, but congratulations to Duncan for what he's doing here in Volusia County, carrying the torch of liberty. I really applaud what you're doing, and it's such a sad time in America right now to see that we've gotten to the point in education that we've conditioned our kids to petition the government to take away our liberties when this whole country was founded on the principles of liberty. It shows that we're not teaching it in schools, and we're not teaching history at all. So I'm just astounded at the amount that the left has control over so many children and, doing what they're doing to try to take away liberty away from you and me, good citizens. So I applaud you guys for what you're doing, and it's sad. I have two children who went to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas.
Wow.
And unfortunately, one of them I'm hearing from, has that emotion still going on, and she, she's falling in line with all of the rhetoric that the left is proposing out there, and I'm trying to draw her back slowly in love, and tell her the truth. But what we're seeing is them, of course, co-opting every group they can, trying to get these kids up there and forcing an issue to end up moving the ball in that socialist direction that they've been doing for over a century. And it's just sad. So we have a bright light in people like you, Duncan and Malcolm there. You guys are doing a fantastic job of carrying that torch, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Ray. I appreciate it. We also have a call now from Chris, I think calling from Ormond Beach, if I'm not mistaken. Chris, are you on with us?
Yes. Hey, how's it going, Victor?
Welcome to the final episode of Trump Talk Live, Chris.
Yeah, this is the Trump Talk of Ormond Beach. I just wanted to thank all you guys for everything you do, and it's been a great year. I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm out here working in the garage on Thursday nights anymore, because I'm not going to be able to listen to you.
Well, you can always get the podcast and go through memory lane from the past year, but as long as it's up there. But Chris is the guy that drives the Trump truck all over the territory, and he was one of the stalwarts who took the Trump signage all over the state of Florida for the Republican Party of Volusia County. And Chris is one of those guys who also drove a truckload of relief supplies to Texas after the Hurricane Harvey last year. Remember, we spent a few days loading that truck up, and Chris drove day and night to get it to a church in the inner city areas of Houston. So Chris is one of your pure heart, good Americans, a good conservative American. We appreciate you being with us during the past year to listen to us, Chris, and we always appreciate your support.
All right, and I thank you guys, and I know Tony's not out there, but I know you guys couldn't have done this without Tony and Big Joe. I hope he feels better soon, and you guys take care of, and I'll see you real soon.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we're on with Sylvia next. Sylvia's on Trump Talk Live. Sylvia, welcome.
Hi. First of all, I believe that every single teacher, administrator, and coach who is confident and competent should be armed. And another thing that is never brought up, as far as I've heard, is the murder of people you don't know. And that is just something that is completely different, because people with motive and opportunity and means, there will always be murders among people who, you've done me wrong, and people who can't control their temper. But people who go and shoot up people they don't know is a completely different mindset. That's like Boko Haram, and that's like Al-Qaeda. And that, I think, has to be investigated. And where is that coming from?
That's a terrorist heart, is what that is. It's a
Pure
dark,
evil.
deep, pure evil. Pure evil, Sylvia.
Pure evil.
There's nothing beyond that. I mean, yes, you have domestic incidents where people, cause harm to people they know, and that's something we understand in the dimensions of human behavior. But this kind of evil is a different level. And God knows that someone like Billy Graham would say, that person needs to do a deep think and ask for forgiveness in a deep, deep way for that kind of a crime. And I don't know if there's enough heart out there to give a forgiveness for that kind of a crime. Sylvia, thank you for calling in.
Okay.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Do we have any more calls? Right. Okay, we're going to take one quick call before we go to the break. Who do we have on? Ray? Ray's back? Ray? Another Ray.
Hey.
Huh. Ray.
Hey, yeah. Hey, Vic.
This is
Ray.
Wawa Donuts Ray. Is that right, from Port Orange?
Hi.
Yes.
It's me, buddy.
Hi.
Hey, I'll be there helping out, you know. Hey, I just want my Democrat, all my Democrat friends, especially the veterans. Okay, I'm a 10-year veteran, 30-year veteran, right?
Sergeant Ray, U.S. Army, right?
Yep, U.S. Army, 30 years. Anyway, I bought houses, I raised family, did all the stuff. I had the American dream. I think I accomplished it. Proud of what I did. But because I voted for the person that I wanted in office, i.e. Donald Trump, I'm deplorable, according to the Democrats. I want every one of my veteran buddies remember that.
Yeah.
Just think about that. I'm deplorable.
Yeah.
But the dreamers, we got to help those people that are here illegally.
Yeah. It's a bizarre world. Everything's upside down, Ray.
Yeah, the hell with me, you know. I only put in 30 years, 3 tours of NAM, all that kind of stuff, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I'm deplorable, though.
We salute you, sir, and you and your deplorable heart. Thank you so much
I'll be there.
Thanks for being with us for the past year. We appreciate it. Thank you. We're going to take a break and come back with the rest of Trump Talk Live, the last half hour, in a moment.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Stay with us for information you'll never get from the left-wing media, right here on Trump Talk Live, where the deplorables are ignored no more.
At Fields, we're known for our complimentary loaners. Hello, I'm Dan Fields, and now we're offering loaners you can take home and keep.
It's Fields Loaner Sales Event.
We're offering every low-mileage current loaner at every Fields location to be sold to the public. These are late-model cars with the balance of their factory warranty and only have a few thousand miles on them. They've been hand-picked, pampered, and checked over, so our customers can drive them with peace of mind. And now, you can buy or lease a loaner for less like this.
Take over $6,000 off on select service loaners at Fields Volvo Cars of Daytona Beach. Plus, save big on a great selection of low-mileage demos.
And when you become part of the Fields family, you get, of course, complimentary loaners, car washes, and our gourmet cafes. Plus, much, much more.
Fields Volvo Cars of Daytona Beach. See Fields first at fieldsvolvocarsofdaytonabeach.com. Offer ends 2/28/18.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Welcome back to Trump Talk Live. We have one more caller. Mason is calling. Mason, you're on the air. Mason, are you there? Seems we lost Mason. Mason's not here. You had a quote, looking back to our discussion the past hour and a half about guns, and then we're going to move on to another topic. Go ahead.
Mr. Sanchez, when he called, reminded me of a very pertinent quote by Benjamin Franklin. Any society that will give up a little liberty to gain a little security will deserve neither and lose both.
Yeah, a wise founding father, Benjamin Franklin. Now, we had indictments from Robert Mueller, the special counsel. Of course, aside from the Manafort getting indicted for more tax evasion, he seems to be running out of ammunition. He indicted 13 Russians. And oddly enough, there was no evidence there that any American had colluded with these Russians in their meddling with U.S. elections, and no evidence that the U.S. elections had in any way been changed in their outcome by any of this meddling. So, a big piffle nothing burger. But let's listen to Rod Rosenstein. I refer to him as the Barney Fife of the Justice Department, delivering his information about the indictments. Let's hear what it charges in cut one.
The indictment charges 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for committing federal crimes while seeking to interfere in the United States political system, including the 2016 presidential election. The defendants allegedly conducted what they called information warfare against the United States, with the stated goal of spreading distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general.
And the details of the indictment. Now, what were they up to, Deputy Attorney General?
12 of the individual defendants worked at various times for a company called Internet Research Agency, LLC, a Russian company based in St. Petersburg. The other individual defendant, Yevgeny Viktorovich Prigozhin, funded the conspiracy through companies known as Concord Management and Consulting, LLC, Concord Catering, and many affiliates and subsidiaries. The conspiracy was part of a larger operation called Project Lakta. Project Lakta included multiple components, some involving domestic audiences within the Russian Federation, and others targeting foreign audiences in multiple countries.
In multiple countries. And this is all based out of St. Petersburg. Let's listen.
Internet Research Agency allegedly operated through Russian shell companies. It employed hundreds of people in its online operations, ranging from creators of fictitious personas to technical and administrative support personnel, with an annual budget of millions of dollars. Internet Research Agency was a structured organization headed by a management group and arranged into departments, including graphics, search engine optimization, information technology, and finance departments. In 2014, the company established a translator project focused on the United States.
Now, keep in mind when I say St. Petersburg, I'm not talking about Tampa, St. Petersburg. I'm talking about St. Petersburg, Russia, named after Peter the Great. This is Russian Tsar. Okay, so now they were using U.S. servers to pose as American websites and Facebook pages. Let's listen.
In July of 2016, more than 80 employees were assigned to the translator project. 2 of the defendants allegedly traveled to the United States in 2014 to collect intelligence for their American influence operations. In order to hide the Russian origins of their activities, the defendants allegedly purchased space on computer servers located here in the United States in order to set up a virtual private network. The defendants allegedly used that infrastructure to establish hundreds of accounts on social media networks such as Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, making it appear that those accounts were controlled by persons located in the United States.
Now, here's the real twist on this. They were pretending to be American activists on both sides of the political spectrum.
The defendants posed as politically and socially active Americans, advocating for and against particular candidates. They established social media pages and groups to communicate with unwitting Americans. They also purchased political advertisements on social media networks. The Russians also recruited and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns, and stage political rallies. The defendants and their co-conspirators pretended to be grassroots activists. According to the indictment, the Americans did not know that they were communicating with Russians.
Get that. Unwitting. They did not know that they were communicating with Russians. That doesn't mean, that's not collusion. There was no collusion, right?
I'm very wary of this, and I'm growing more and more concerned that the social media companies will pick this up and use it as an excuse to censor conservative platforms. Already, a very prominent, it sounds weird, but a very prominent Greek life website, Old Row, which is pro-Trump, it's a fraternity website that's pro-Trump.
Right.
They received a long message from Facebook saying they had to either stop campaigning for Donald Trump or their thing was going to be removed.
Yeah, well, they, of course, all these Google and Facebook and all these outfits are populated with the leftists. But the Russians, even after the election, they were playing both sides of the political aisle. Let's listen.
After the election, the defendants allegedly staged rallies to support the president-elect while simultaneously staging rallies to protest his election. For example, the defendants organized one rally to support the president-elect and another rally to oppose him, both in New York on the same day.
That's misleading, though, Duncan, because, in fact, what we understand is that the pro-Trump rally or whatever it was had maybe 50 people at most. The anti-Trump rally had thousands, so that wasn't exactly even-handed. Their purpose was to disrupt and sow discord, not necessarily to influence who got elected. And this is the coup de grace. After all this long shaggy dog story, this year-and-a-half Russian collusion delusion, tell us, Deputy Attorney General, what member of the Trump administration or person who is associate of Donald Trump or President himself was colluding with the Russians here?
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
Poof. You hear the air going out of the balloon, Duncan?
Absolutely.
It's a complete flop. Now, they may come up with some other stuff, but if this is all he's got left in his bag of tricks, he just indicted 13 Russians who can never be arrested, tried, or convicted. Nothing. All this for nothing. Yeah, we proved the Russians are making mischief. You didn't think so since 1917, since the Russian Revolution, that they've been making mischief around the world? Of course they've been making mischief. So, but the media doesn't want to let go of this, Duncan. The press corps, the White House press corps, they're rabid about this. What is the president going to do about this? So let's hear what they said to Sarah Sanders.
Does the president now acknowledge what the special counsel indictments made clear, which is that Russians not only tried to meddle but interfere and influence the 2016 election?
Absolutely, and the president has acknowledged that multiple times before. He acknowledged it during the transition. He acknowledged it during a press conference in Poland, and he acknowledged it for a third time at a press event in Poland. He has stated several times, I think one of the places where you guys seem to get very confused, and it seems to happen regularly, the president hasn't said that Russia didn't meddle. What he's saying is it didn't have an impact, and it certainly wasn't with help from the Trump campaign. It's very clear that Russia meddled in the election. It's also very clear that it didn't have an impact on the election, and it's also very clear that the Trump campaign didn't collude with the Russians in any way for this process to take place.
So, if that's the case, why hasn't the president implemented the sanctions which Congress passed last year?
Look, frankly, that's not completely accurate. Look, this president's been tougher on Russia, far tougher on, well, there's a process that has to take place, and we're going through that process. That law also says that the countries have to violate something in order for those sanctions to go into place, and that hasn't necessarily happened. But what I can tell you, hold on, that the president has been extremely tough on Russia. He helped push through $700 billion to rebuild our military. I can assure you Russia is not excited about that. He's helped export energy to Eastern Europe. I can assure you Russia is not excited about that. He has put and upheld sanctions that the Obama administration put in place. He's upheld those. He's closed 3 diplomatic properties that were Russia's here in the United States. He has taken a number of actions against Russia and put pressure on them. He's helped arm the Ukrainians. There are a number of places that Obama was too weak and refused to take and put pressure on Russia where this president has.
Pow. Okay, that's enough nonsense out of the White House press corps. I don't want to hear the rest of it. It just makes your stomach raw. Exit pursuing a bear. Exit stage left. Goes to the meeting. With the Democrats' Russian obsession having dwindled into absurdity, President Trump can continue to move the country forward, writes Conrad Black. It is both dismal and amusing to see the rationalizations of the diehard Kremlin collusionist after Robert Mueller's spurious indictment of the 13 Russians who will never encounter the vagaries of U.S. justice. Conspiring against the United States, this whole thing is nonsense. The whole ambience of the investigation is now that of a phantom consolation prize for the absence of a crime, a victim, or a culprit, all amplified by the hollow sanctimony of an official America that has meddled countless times in the elections of other countries, usually for the general good of the Western alliance. The desperation of the Trump impeachers is piquant. The indictment doesn't cover hacking. Where might that lead? And the fact that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein said this indictment refers to no Americans and that it contains no allegation of affecting the election result or of collusion by Americans may mean that perhaps another indictment will. It is to this pathetic wisp that the New York Times' Tom Friedman claim of a Russian assault on American sovereignty equivalent to Pearl Harbor in 9/11 and Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia's 1,000 Russian agents delivering in Wisconsin to Trump on election night have been reduced. It's a big load of crap.
For months, they've used this Russian collusion delusion, to steal your words, to stop critical legislation that is critical for improving people's lives, for helping the working class, and for redeeming our republic. And I'm really hoping we can put this behind us, because there's a lot of high school students like me who are entering into the workforce, and Republicans are working hard to rebuild this economy, and Democrats need to get on board.
That's right. They need to get with it. And the question is begged by Robert Barnes: does Mueller indictment mean Clinton campaign can now be indicted for Christopher Steele and that smear dossier that he got through the Russians? Or lawyer Greg Jarrett, who's the legal analyst for Fox News, has listed 6 ways that Comey, Rosenstein, McCabe, Yates are in serious legal jeopardy because of their trumped-up information based on that fake dossier that got them the FISA warrant to spy on Trump's people, to get them what little ridiculous evidence they had to go after people like Manafort, which has nothing to do with Russian collusion delusion. It is all a fantasy. And we are going to return with the final 15 minutes of Trump Talk Live and a look back at our epic president when we return.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033. Stay tuned as we peel away those layers of liberal hypocrisy right here on Trump Talk Live, where the deplorables are ignored no more.
I'm John Morgan of Morgan & Morgan. I'm often asked to describe myself. It's an interesting question. For over 30 years, my fights have been against giants, insurance companies, the makers of unsafe products, tobacco and pharmaceutical companies, BP in the great oil spill, and companies who defraud consumers and their own employees. I fight the powerful for the powerless, and our results speak for themselves. We have recovered billions and billions and billions of dollars for our clients. $1.2 billion in one case alone. I risk millions of dollars of my own money in case cause fighting these wrongdoers. I spent $10 million in Florida to pass a constitutional amendment to allow sick and injured people to use medical marijuana. I would describe myself as a fighter who hates to lose. If you want a fighter, call me on your cell phone at #law. That's #529. Morgan & Morgan, forthepeople.com. Offices, Daytona Beach.
Your voice can be heard loud and clear right here on Trump Talk Live. Our local number is 239-0033. You can call us toll-free from anywhere in the USA at 800-927-0033.
Well, I could not leave you folks, dear Trumpublicans, without having a little joke at the expense of Fancy Nancy. She had a little forum. She was speaking about what a terrible thing this Trump tax reform is, what a hoax upon the people. Remember, she's the one that said it was crumbs when you get a $2,000 tax cut or you get a $1,000 bonus or $2,000 bonus from your employer, which they're working now in Congress to try to make tax-free so that they don't have to pay taxes on the bonuses. Well, she was talking to a group talking about how, well, the average person across the kitchen table, now what does she know? Somebody yelled out, "How much are you worth, Nancy?" And she didn't want to talk about that at all. You got to listen carefully. I'm setting it up for you. Let's listen.
These are kitchen table issues, though, for America's families, because most people are not in deadening poverty, but some are. But most people have to struggle to make ends meet. So no, we're not talking about that.
She's not talking about that, but we are. Nancy Pelosi's worth $100 million plus. She is one of the richest women, if not the richest woman in Congress. So when she talks to you about the poor working class, this woman has left that in the dust many, many years ago. One thing that Donald Trump has said he wants to do is making sure that Washington, let's throw the infrastructure graphic up, is no longer going to be a roadblock to rebuilding America. We're talking about getting rid of the red tape. You're right there. Just put it in. The red tape, because they're in sequence. You can find them. But anyhow, okay. So we've got the red tape. And we're back on camera. He wants a $1.5 trillion investment. Some of it just $200 billion from the feds, but the rest of it seeded from private sources and local governments who can control more of what's going on. Less red tape. I can tell you that red tape sometimes takes you 3 times or 4 times the length of the actual project when you have to get You got to dig the ground for Indian arrowheads, and you got to dig the ground for a little piece of vegetation that tells you it's a wetland. It's all ridiculous. And what it does is makes consultants rich at your expense. So, how to preserve the true American nature, the nature of American greatness. What is it that makes American great? What really resonated so much with his supporters when Donald Trump promised to make America great again? In this From American Greatness. What was it? No, we didn't have it. What was it that we had lost? Why did so many people perceive the 8 years of the last administration as a period of decline? It helps to take a broad perspective. We can listen to what Trump said when he spoke at his inauguration a little over a year ago. I was there for that moment. Let's listen to what he said about the transfer of power at that time.
Today, we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people.
You, the people. We, the people.
Absolutely.
The people are sovereign. Trump recognizes that. That's a very important fundamental principle. Now, we are not a democracy. We are a republic. That's important to know. A republic is a representative form of government. We elect people who then govern on our behalf. We replace the people or fire them if they don't do the good enough job. Here's what else he said. He announced a new era had begun with Donald Trump.
From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families.
Yeah, contrast that with Nancy Crumbs Pelosi.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's going to benefit the deplorables, those of us, as Sergeant Ray said, we the deplorables. We'll change that, we the people, to we the deplorables. How does that sound? And America will serve as an example to the world. Let's listen to Trump.
We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
That was the kickoff. They called it a dark speech. I would say those of us that they call deplorables did not see anything dark in that speech.
Absolutely.
Now, we went overseas on his first major foreign policy trip, which was a 2-week tour, and it was quite something. And he went to the Arab nations, Saudi Arabia, and he actually called them out for harboring and sponsoring terrorists and said, you've got to stop this. If you want to have civilization and partner with us, you have to get rid of these terrorists. And what did Reagan say to Mr. Gorbachev before the Cold War came to the end?
Tear down this wall.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. These words from Donald Trump, drive them out. Drive them out of this earth. This will resonate like a Reagan-esque speech. And here's what Trump said to the Arab world.
Every time a terrorist murders an innocent person and falsely invokes the name of God, it should be an insult to every person of faith. Terrorists do not worship God. They worship death. If we do not act against this organized terror, then we know what will happen and what will be the end result. Terrorism's devastation of life will continue to spread. Peaceful societies will become engulfed by violence, and the futures of many generations will be sadly squandered. America is prepared to stand with you in pursuit of shared interests and common security. But the nations of the Middle East cannot wait for American power to crush this enemy for them. The nations of the Middle East will have to decide what kind of future they want for themselves, for their country, and frankly, for their families and for their children. It's a choice between two futures, and it is a choice America cannot make for you. A better future is only possible if your nations drive out the terrorists and drive out the extremists. Drive them out. Drive them out of your places of worship. Drive them out of your communities. Drive them out of your holy land. and drive them out of this earth.
And we finish, Duncan, when we finish this, I want to just say it's been a privilege to have you share the microphones with me tonight.
Absolutely.
You've
Thank
done
you
a
so much for the
phenomenal
honor.
job. A Star is Born. You have a great future in politics. You are a brilliant young man. You and Malcolm both are brilliant young men. And we heard President Trump in his recent speech to Congress, State of the Union, talk about the monuments to American freedom that actually surrounded them. And let's go out by listening to a little bit of what Donald Trump sees America as becoming, built on what it has been. And with that, we bid you adieu and thank you for a full year of Trump Talk Live, and let's make America great again together.
Atop the dome of this Capitol stands the Statue of Freedom. She stands tall and dignified among the monuments to our ancestors who fought and lived and died to protect her. Monuments to Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln and King. Memorials to the heroes of Yorktown and Saratoga. To young Americans who shed their blood on the shores of Normandy and the fields beyond, and others who went down in the waters of the Pacific and the skies all over Asia. And freedom stands tall over one more monument, this one, this Capitol, this living monument. This is the monument to the American people.
Our president's comments to the Congress in the House of the People, the House of Representatives. They sometimes do a very poor job of representing us. Sometimes they make us proud. This president has made us proud, Duncan and Malcolm. This president is going to make this country something that we've always sought it to be. We knew it could be. Ronald Reagan saw it as the shining city on the hill. We had a pastor named Billy Graham who called us to forgiveness and to love, the love of God. We have a president here who's getting growingly spiritual as he moves through into his second year of the presidency. And as a leader, he is fearless, he is bold, he is willing to take the punches, he's willing to counterpunch when necessary, but he's going to stand up for America and for your generation, Duncan, and for your grandchildren, and for the children out there today that need to be safe again. We hope this president can succeed. We thank you for being with Trump Talk Live this year. We're going to continue the message in other platforms, and we want you to do everything you can to elect people that are going to support President Donald Trump and to help him accomplish his mission, to make America great again, to make America prosperous again, to make America safe again, and to make us all proud of the country we call home and the flag we salute and the veterans we must support as they defend our freedoms to be called Americans. So thank you. Thank you for watching Trump Talk Live. Thank you for listening. And together, we're going to make America great again.
Feeling stuck in a state of compensation stagnation? You know, another year with no raise. Then let State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand help you get to a better state with a discount double check that can stretch your hard-earned dollars a little farther. Sonia will go through your car insurance to make sure you're getting all the discounts you deserve. Discounts that could add up to 40% and put a few hundred extra dollars in your pocket. Sound good? Then get your budget to a better state by calling State Farm agent Sonia Mori in DeLand today. Discounts may vary state to state.
You've been listening to the final 2-hour broadcast of Trump Talk Live. Thank you for helping us make America great again during the first year of Donald Trump's transformational presidency. We've given you the truth about President Donald Trump's bold mission to drain the swamp, cut the red tape, cut your taxes, build that wall, defend America's borders, keep our families, homes, and businesses safe, and make America prosperous again. We thank all Trumpublicans who stand up for America, stand for our flag, and defend our Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. Trump Talk Live is presented each week by the Republican Party of Volusia County, where we the people have the right voice when it comes to defending America's founding values. In God we trust. In America we believe.
FM 93.5, AM 1150 WNDB Daytona Beach. Proud to be locally owned, a Southern Stone station.